Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 2 discussion. Today, we are going to be discussing the massive mess that is the patch notes for Path of Exile 2's 0.5.0 expansion. Welcome. Today is day 19 of teaser season. We've got a lot to go through. This is going to take a long time if you want to see a summarized version that is still an hour long. I will put a link to it down in the description below. At least I will at some point by the end of this video because I will probably forget to do it now. Anyways, welcome all, welcome all. Thank you for showing up. What we're going to be doing is discussing the things that are present in the patch notes, but also a couple of things that are missing because there is a lot less skill balance than a lot of us were expecting to see. And on top of that, we'll also be taking questions from those of you that are sitting in chat. I am pointing, and I'm pointing actually at a point where you probably can't see me on screen. I'm pointing towards what is my right end of the screen, and that is actually your left end of the screen, but that is where I have my chat appearing on my end so that I can see it. Anyways, we are going to jump into it, having a quick look at some of the things that have come up in here. But firstly, let's talk about what is not in here. Firstly, there are no nerfs to twisters as a skill. So expect twisters to be something that a lot of people are hyped for pre-league, and also expect them to be something a lot of people are testing aggressively, taking very seriously, running from start to end game. There are minimal nerfs to grenades that are present in these patch notes, and there's also an entirely new grenade weapon that's been added as well. But there are minimum changes to grenades, and grenades look like they're in a pretty strong spot overall. They're a very good early starter, but I will just warn you with grenades that they have decided to nerf oil grenades a little bit, and honestly, I think you probably want to avoid them because oil grenades, they could be busted OP, but at the same time, they caused a lot of performance issues for people. So at the moment, you're getting all of the performance drag that's caused by them, all of the increased heating up of your PC, all that sort of not very fun stuff, but you're not going to be getting the explosive performance that you used to get from them. So keep that one in mind with respect to oil grenade. They're something that, like, they're probably serviceable still, but they are eating a little bit of a nerf here, and I'm not convinced of them. But everything else in the grenade package looks really good. And if you're looking for a safe starter, I would say that any of the south of the tree grenade builds seem like they're really good. One of the advantages that those builds have is that there's a couple of extraordinarily powerful nodes on the classic passive tree. So whilst a lot of people are navigating through the passive tree, picking up like 10% increased damage here, and then there's a notable, and that notable is 35% increased damage, but 10% penalty to some other stat. They're sort of, that is a good stat for them. That is a good node, but it's not something that's massive. Instead, you're getting +1 grenade fired with every, +1 projectile fired with every grenade that you launch, and that is paired with a very manageable drawback that right about the time that you get that, you end up getting a solution to an explosive shot. So very, very strong setup there. I would just quickly check for those of you that are in chat at the moment, are people able to hear me correctly? Is everything working properly? I just want to make sure that that's working before we dig too far in. Otherwise, if we've got some sort of major technical issues, that would be kind of funny, but if I know that, that would be good. If everything is working fine, let me know that as well. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead as though everything is fine. So Twister's not getting nerfed, Grenade's not getting nerfed. Unfortunately, one thing that really is grinding my gears a bit is that we are still dealing with the problems that are caused by increased item rarity as a player stat, and we're still dealing with the problems that are caused by plus to gem levels as a player stat that is essentially mandatory on gear. So those are things. Someone was asking me before the stream started why I think grinding gear games have left them in. I feel like they weren't confident to do a full rebalance of endgame monster statistics that might be needed without plus to gem levels. And my solution would just be remove plus to gem levels, bake in +4 gem levels to level 21 gems, bake in +3.5 of power to level 20, 19, 18, 17, bake in +3 to a bit below that, just sort of bake in a degree of power that is compensatory for what's lost by losing plus to gem levels as a scaling vector, and potentially even bake in higher mana costs as well, because obviously adding to your gem level does add to your mana cost, and part of the balancing factor that they've got is that whilst it is extraordinarily powerful to get plus to gem levels, at the same time as doing extra damage, you are also sometimes you're still dealing more damage per mana that you spend, so it's more efficient than increasing your attack speed, but it still is something pretty significant. So yeah, plus the gem levels are not nearly nerfed hard enough. A comment in chat's just come up that Life Sprig didn't get nerfed enough and it's still OP as a starter weapon. A Life Sprig is actually pretty hard to get as a low-level item, I will say. Yes, it is incredibly OP if you do get a +3 Life Sprig very early in the game. That is incredibly OP, but good luck getting that. That's the sort of thing that you will only get usually by applying Chance Orbs when you're at endgame. So, but yeah, I was wanting to see plus the gem level nerfs that are quite a bit harder, with some of that power compensated for, maybe even just with monster stat nerfs, honestly. I don't think it'd be a problem if you just went, okay, well, we're reducing giga top-end juice DPS by 75%, we're reducing medium, like realistic high-end DPS by 40%. So then you would say, all right, minus 75% damage is available for when you're doing the hardest content in the game. So we'll just bring their hit points down by a compensatory amount. The Fraythorn rituals have come up in chat. Should you go and farm the Fraythorn rituals in Act 1? I think the answer is almost certainly no. I don't think you gain nearly enough power to justify that time. Even if you do get lucky and you get a really good for your build unique item, I don't think it's fantastic. And if you get one that's good for someone else's build, it's actually kind of hard to sell them early on. It's not like people have got much to trade for them. So that's the real problem with that. Anyways, I wanted to start by going through each section of this, and after each section, we'll discuss anything that comes up in chat. I might end up finding that I get a little bit buried, depending on how busy the chat gets. We might end up getting too busy to be able to keep up with everything. So we'll see how exactly that goes. But we'll try to keep an eye on everything that comes up in chat. But here on the Runes of Aldur League, the first thing is, I think, things that are new to new players, but they're very familiar to established Path of Exile 1 players. So, fresh economy with the Aldur League. If you're interested in it, if you prefer to play your existing characters, you do have the right to do that, but they will be in Early Access Standard. If you do play in the Runes of Aldur League, though, in each area you will find a remnant. This will allow you to craft an item of your choosing by using runic recipes that are engraved into the slots on the remnant. Now, the more of these that you use, the more monsters you're going to have to fight in order to claim your prize, and also the nastier those monsters are going to get. And it seems like there's an escalating waves thing here. So if you wanted to go with a 4-rune combo, the first monsters you fight, there'll be a pack of monsters that'll attack you, and they'll have the benefits of 1 rune. Then you'll fight a second pack, and they'll have the first 2 runes. Then you'll fight a third pack with 3 runes, and then you'll fight a fourth pack with 4 runes. Depending on the rune shapes used, you'll face an encounter with tough enemies you'll need to defeat to claim your item. Each additional one will increase the number of waves of enemies, adding additional runic monsters to the enemies with each wave. Remnants start with any number of slots between 2 and 10. Higher numbers are rarer, but allow you to craft much rarer items. Now, this is the thing to keep an eye on. I think we might see a situation where 10s might have some very special items, but that's going to be something we'll have to see. I think 10s might be quite rare, and it might be the case that most of the time at endgame you're fighting 8s and 9s, and even 6s and 7s when you're unlucky in a zone. But every now and again you get really lucky and you get an 8 or a 9 or a 10, and that will potentially have something really good. Something that's important to note with the general itemization system in Path of Exile 2, there are 10 internal tiers of items. This has been mentioned to us in the past, and this is one of the really complex things they've got with their loot system. So the way that it works is that there's like the bottom tier, I think, has currencies up to and including the Regal Shard. Then the higher tiers you can only get with non-zero rarity. But when I say non-zero, I mean player rarity, monster rarity, zone rarity, all multiplied. So in that sense, it's not just player rarity, which is the stat that causes problems. And the more of this that you end up getting, the more that you start seeing those items get replaced by things like, well, initially transmutes and augments, and then later on alchemy orbs, and then real currency after that, like currencies you actually care about. Tier 10, I think, is extraordinarily rare. So tier 10, I think tier 9 might actually be your, your tiered rare items in game where you get your rare tier 5 items unidentified and how they're pretty rare. I think that might be tier 8 or tier 9. And then tier 10 is above that. So you can get them when you're fighting very top end content, but the difference is that the tier 10s on the loot in the game, they mostly come from monsters that are quite tough. So I think like tier 10s might be headhunter type items in the end. Anyways, there's a bunch of things that are going on there. Monsters that are raised by remnants can drop a new currency, Verisium Metal. Now, those of you that have played Path of Exile 1 will have experienced Verisium there as well. It's just sort of a bound-to-account currency that you can then send away in King's March in order to try and get currency orbs off places. And that is something that, they're going to drop new stuff. There's a new NPC that's going to allow you to unlock various crafting features. And Verisium Runeforging is important here. So in the summary video that I did, I was a bit clunky about this at first, and honestly should have re-recorded this section, but I didn't do that. So Verisium Reforging is a system you'll gain access to in Act 1. Now, early on, this allows you to add Runic Ward to your rare armors early on by spending Verisium. So if they're lower than level 55, they gain Runic Ward with no drawback. If they're higher than 55, then they're going to trade some of their evasion, energy shield, and armor in order to get Runic Ward instead. And this is a new defense. It kicks in once you reach 1 life and effectively works as a second life pool. So it's an extension of your life pool, but you can spend it to cast certain spells as well. And I think the ability to spend some of your life to cast spells, your sort of life, is going to be really interesting here. Added 13 new alloy currency items which can be unlocked through remnant encounters after completing Pharaoh's quest in Act 2. These will add new various crafted modifiers to items by replacing an existing modifier similar to perfect essences. This could be really good if this allows you to get really fundamental stuff there, really basic stuff there. And that's going to be, something to keep an eye on. Clockwork Menagerie in comments has a really good little comment there. Something I hadn't noticed. The uniques and omens in Ritual are endgame only. So it may well be that Freythorn still provides you a bunch of rare items and low currencies. So, transmutations, augmentations, regal shards, maybe a regal orb if you're lucky, and a whole bunch of other just low-end stuff. Now, in Act 3, you're going to gain the ability to unlock unique Verisium Reforging. So this is not something you get from day one. And then at this point, you can upgrade the base type of unique weapons and armors that drop at levels lower than 55. These upgraded uniques will have higher damage if they're weapons, and armors will have increased base defenses and will also gain Runic Ward. This will allow them to be more useful at higher levels. Unique armors above 55 can also be runeforged, but in this case, you're going to be sacrificing some defenses in order to pick up Runic Ward. So that's another thing to keep in mind there. That's quite different. Now, unique Verisium Reforging has additional properties when used on Kalguran uniques. We don't know what these are. This is going to be one of those secret things to find out. Essentially, as I see it, these reforged versions of Kalguran uniques are new uniques. We don't know what's going on there. We had a comment there from Andrew Hentz who's asking what the patch notes in general mean for Ignite viability. Beric's Respite is a new item that's being added. If you're familiar with Path of Exile 1, that Beric's Respite is something that solves the biggest individual problem that Ignite has, which is the inability to transfer Ignites effectively from one monster to another. So we will find out on that one. We don't have stats for Beric's Respite. I'm honestly hyped to see that item. I would like to see all 3 Beric's rings. And for those of you that don't play Path of Exile 1, Beric's Path and Beric's Grip are relatively cheap. Beric's Respite is, it ends up cheap because it's not super rare, but it's also quite a bit rarer than the other 2. And it's an item that its theme is that when you kill an enemy that is on fire, the fire spreads to all nearby enemies, as does any shock that's present on that enemy. And when it spreads, this is a new copy of that Ignite or that shock with the same duration that was left on the deceased monster. So there's a lot of things that are there, but that is something to keep an eye on because Beric's Respite is an exciting item in Path of Exile 1. In POE1, you can also vendor all 3 of the Beric strings, and you get basically a pure damage ring that is a quite good early and middle endgame unique item. It's something that you can beat at endgame, but you need I mean, the example would just be a really high energy shield chest in 040. If there was a unique item that was just a really high energy shield chest with good resistances but nothing else, that would be the sort of equivalent of what the taming is. The taming is a very good item. It's something you can replace, but it's hard to replace. And then we have Ancient Runes, which can be unlocked to be crafted by Remnant encounters after completing Pharaoh's Quest in Act 4. These will have powerful bonuses specific to each weapon type. This is something we don't know anything about. Again, there's quite a lot of these sorts of additional mechanics that are being added, where there's new socketables, and we don't know much about these new socketables. They're doing some stuff. We don't know exactly what it is. And there's a lot to discover in terms of whether it's good, whether it's terrible. We just don't know. And a lot of this is just really hard stuff to try and assess. Added 13 mythical early game runes. I've got to say, mythical early game. Is it just me that doesn't think these two words go together? Is that just me, or does someone else agree in chat? Like, mythical sounds like something that's a chase item at endgame. It does not sound like something that you get early on. But anyways, these can be crafted from Remnant encounters, and they provide significant boost to level 15 plus characters. Exactly what they are, we're going to have to find that out. But if they're mythical early game runes, that sounds like it's basically the benefit of a high level rune early on, maybe. They call them significant, so I don't know. I'm unclear as to exactly what that is. Next, we have the single best line. Like, I think for a lot of people, this is one of the best lines in the entirety of the patch notes. Completely out of left field. I think this is something that they've added when they've realized players have correctly identified that there's a bit of a problem where items like load-bearing resistances are difficult in Path of Exile 2, not because it's tough to get the resistances, but because you often get the wrong ones. And so what's happening here is that they're adding in 3 things that replicate the effects of Path of Exile 1's Harvest, transfer 1 resistance into another. This thing is just enormous. This thing is absolutely fantastic. And it's just going to solve so many problems, honestly. Like, just convert another resistance modifier into fire. Convert the another resistance modifier into cold. Convert another one into lightning. Huge, huge, huge. One of those single lines of text that I think is going to save an enormous amount of hassle, an enormous amount of trading, an enormous amount of stuffing around. Added 15 metacrafting runes that can be crafted from remnants. Now, these metacrafting runes are strong. We have seen what they do. A lot of these can't be removed from items, so they permanently brick the socket they're put into, and they grant permanently the ability for a particular mod to be crafted in a certain area. So certain types of mods to be crafted. So for instance, the item might be permanently modified to be able to be allowed to roll time modifiers on it. Modifiers that you normally couldn't get. I would say that these are the equivalent of Path of Exile 1's Elder Slayer Exalted Orbs. So if you're familiar with Path of Exile 1, you get a Conqueror's Exalted Orb, or for that matter, a Shaper or Elder Exalted Orb. They transform the modifier pool that's available on the item, and they do so at the cost of turning off your ability to scale in a certain way, which is Eater and Exarch, and also Fracturing in Path of Exile 1. So it will be interesting to see exactly where that ends up going, but this is something that I think some of these will be really good. Some of them will probably end up not being really good, but that'll be fine too. Added 60 plus runes that can be created by destroying a unique to make a rune that gains some of its properties. Now, there is a mechanic whereby you can extract modifiers from a unique, but the fact that it's 60 plus, this kind of makes me think, like, you're not using the term 60 plus if it's exactly 94. You're going to be using it if it's 65 or 66, or you've got 61 of them planned and you're expecting maybe there's 3 more you're still testing, you're not sure if you're going to put them in or not. that's the sort of situation which you would use the term 60 plus. Otherwise, you would give the exact number if you were sure what it was going to be, or you would say, like, you wouldn't say 60 plus if it was going to be more than 80 and you knew for sure it was going to be more than 80. Yeah, so Black Mage just confirming these meta crafting runes they mentioned in the initial reveal stream that they are going to permanently brick that socket. They're going to have can't be removed or replaced. And Viral Answer with the comment of, maybe added 67 runes, 6-7. And I actually need to look up that meme. Like, I feel like I'm an old man now. I might be old, but I did at least learn what yeet meant. I did at least learn what YOLO meant, even though I'm sort of 15 years older than the oldest person that ever said YOLO, unironically. I'm probably like 25 years older than the youngest person that ever said yeet, unironically. But I just actually don't know the 6-7 meme much. I've got to figure it out at some point. I don't think this is the most pressing thing for me to do in the world at the moment. I feel like I probably have more important things to do, like watching paint dry or, using a toothbrush to polish the fridge. Things like that might be more exciting than learning about 6-7, but I do need to learn it at some point. Anyways, sidetrack there. Sidetrack's always fun. Runic Word Runes, 15 plus of these have been added. They can be crafted from remnants, added or modifying properties related to Runic Ward. Kalguran skills, these can be crafted from remnants, and that's interesting. So these are, of course, being crafted from remnants just simply means you get these as a reward for a combat encounter. I think that is the origins of it. And we've got some clarification there. So it is so Clockwork Menagerie is confirming that my lack of 6-7 knowledge, it is actually another YOLO. It is a reference to a song. And apparently Language Jones has a good linguistics video about it. But the thing is that sometimes just things that don't mean anything can be fun. And honestly, every generation kind of has them. Like, I don't know if anyone else is approximately 45 that's watching this, but like, if you want to talk about a nonsense word that was a thing when we were kids, cowabunga, like, what is that if not a ridiculous word? And so, yeah. Anyways, so just going back to these Kalguran skills, getting back off the sidetrack, the remnants here, these are so remnants and crafting. I feel like what happens is, like, you get a bunch of different pieces, and then inside the map, you don't have access to ones that weren't from inside the map. So if they're like, you might have a list. It's like, okay, you've got 9 that are available to you. You can create this recipe which requires 9, or this one which requires 7, or this one which requires 6, this one which requires 6, and so on and so forth. It's basically all of that sort of complexity, which means that these are probably not of equal rarity to each other. It is entirely possible that some of these are very, very, very much rarer. Like, if they're crafted from remnants and they require all 10, they might be much rarer. Also, like, Skyfall sounds cool here. It probably isn't suitable at the moment to start singing that song, not while I'm on a stream, with the way that copyright laws work, but it is a karaoke favorite, Skyfall, or at least it was a few years ago. I haven't done it in a while. I probably should reverse that at some point. Anyways, it's Friday night at the moment, and I'm not at karaoke, unfortunately. There is karaoke on in walking distance from me, but I decided to do a stream instead. There's also Kalguran supports here, and again, we've just really got names here. So we've seen Frostflame Nova. This was shown to us. Triskelion Cascade was shown to us. I actually had thought that Triskelion Cascade was a sort of variant of Spell Cascade, but it is not. It is a spell. It is a spell by itself. And then after that, we've got Expedition Remnants are being changed into remnants from the runes of Elder League. New Endgame story, which we knew about already, and there is the Ruins of King's March, New Arberia. Logbooks are being changed. Now, I don't know if people saw Grinding Gear Games' video on logbook exploration. I feel like it might have been 2 days ago, something like that. But there's a whole bunch of changes that are being made there. And a lot of bosses from Path of Exile 1 are being ported in. So Medved, Varana, Uhtred, they're joining Olroth as the 4 faction leaders. You get to fight all of them. And when you defeat Oroth, you'll get access to the new pinnacle boss, the Big Spider. And we shall find all of that out later on. Taras248's got an interesting question. With respect to all of these new Kalguran skill gems, so we're talking the skill gems, not the support gems, the 21 of them, how will they interact with the new Gemling Legionnaire? And the answer is we'll find out, I guess, when they get data mined. I think this is something that'll get data mined. I think that's when we'll find out all the details. Now, we're going to have challenges for the first time. I want to get a bit of a poll in chat. In fact, I think there is actually a poll function that is available to me in YouTube. So I'm just going to try and figure out if I can make this work or not. Sorry for anyone that's watching this after the fact. You're going to end up with maybe a short little bit of a time waste here. Do you play POE1 or not? I'm just asking a question of people that are present in chat right now as we're live. Do you play Path of Exile 1 or not? Just get a bit of a sense as to how familiar people are with the challenge system. And it's looking like it's quite a lot. While we're doing this, French Ferrets is asking, do I think that the expedition changes will spill over into Path of Exile 1 like the Breach ones did? Although the Breach ones are kind of in reverse. POE1 got the changes first, then POE2 got them. Yeah, I think if they're good, then they'll spill over. I also think they'll figure that out at some point. So, and Heno6x6 is saying playing POE1 right now. But I'm just going to end the poll at this point because it's pretty clear. Yeah, most of you do play both games, and you'll see there that 44%. So that is a 37-7 split, 37 for yes, 7 for no in there at the moment. And lots of people are doing that. So that's just interesting. I wanted to see this sort of split there. So for those 7 of you that do not play POE1, plus presumably, like if it's a comparable percentage, like 16%, it's probably more than that watching the stream at the moment. These challenges are an MTX set that you can pick up by completing just in-game objectives. It will not be trivial to get the 4th one of these. It will not be trivial at all to get the 4th one of these. I feel like if you might get caught out, you might need to do a lot of endgame. It wouldn't surprise me if you got to do something like defeat the Arbiter of Divinity 8 times, or complete every single Atlas passive point. There'll be a bunch of things like that that take quite a bit of grinding. So yeah, I will see exactly how that ends up going. But basically, there's a totem pole and also the Runes of Aldur challenge set. On top of that, as always with a new league start, you'll have the option of continuing to play your existing characters, but existing characters are going to get messed up a little bit. They're going to be going through a forced reset of their passive tree, and also on top of that, the Atlas is going to be reset as well. I think in response to the Twister question, I think Twister and Grenades will just be dominant early. I don't know that they'll be dominant mid-league or late league. If people genuinely feel that they're going to be dominant on day 2 and day 9 and day 16 and day 23, then in that case they need a nerf. If it just ends up being a skill that's really good on day 2 but that kind of falls off, and like by day 9 it's just sort of upper middle of the pack, and then by day 16 it's really falling off hard, I don't think skills like that necessarily need a nerf, even if they do get all of the firsts. So for instance, Path of Exile 1 right now in 328, slams are the dominant skill on day 1 and 2, but they're fine. Honestly, they are fine. I think they're just exactly right there. And Endgame is like one of the things I really like with the Endgame now. There's something I mentioned in my summary of day 19 video, which is basically a polished and condensed version of this stream. So it's this stream minus some of the minor points and minus some of the responding to chat. But one of the things I pointed out in that is that like just the directionality is going to be really good. Like knowing that you want to go southwest to find Hilda. This feels like it's really important early on. Really, really important on. Mahoka52 just joined. I'll just point out that you can rewind a live stream on YouTube. One of the things I actually really like about YouTube, you can rewind it and speed it up. That's something that is really, really, really solid. So yeah, I think that the day 1 The day one builds that dominate will be twisters, there'll be grenades, and it will still be poison burst arrow. Poison burst arrow is getting nerfed a fair bit, but it's still going to be really dominant. If you want to experience endgame fast, but possibly end up in a situation where you need to reroll later, then these are going to be the builds to start on day one. That's up to you though. Practice one of them, one of the ones that you like, go and practice it, get good at it, and that will be the way to go. So we have the Origins of Divinity Endgame overhaul. There's a new storyline, the Cataclysm of the Beast, which is presumably going to be Acts 5 and 6. I'm assuming that this is something that happens at the end of Act 5, and then Act 6 is the fallout of it. I could very well be wrong. It could be a midpoint of Act 6 thing, but I'm under the impression Act 6 is going to be short. So based on that, I think the Cataclysm of the Beast is going to invoke an ancient protocol designed to scour for and purge corruption should it ever take hold to this degree. Traverse the Atlas to enter the fortress and activate the gates. Open the keys to reach the ancient precursor weapons and then disarm them. On completing your first tower, a fortress will rise from the earth, and this fortress is going to be the second Atlas. I'm actually going to call it the second Atlas. So you've got your main Atlas is your infinite Atlas in all directions, and then the fortress is the replayable area that you're going to basically clear out corners of, and each time you do it, you'll gain access to a whole bunch of bosses. Maps inside the fortress grant one or more Atlas passive points for the Atlas passive tree, completely replacing previous methods of gaining them, and the Atlas passive tree has been expanded with hundreds of nodes. After completing all the maps in the fortress, you will gain enough passive points to fully allocate the Atlas tree. However, this is something I don't like here. This is something that I should have mentioned in my summary video, but this is something that came up when I was doing a Twitch stream this morning discussing this. When I say this morning, I mean like 10 hours ago. So this morning, my local. But there is no need to allow respecialization for the Atlas anymore because you can get it all. I don't think I like this. I think we're going to see a situation where one of the loudest complaining groups in week 2 of the new league. I don't think this is going to be week 1. I think this is going to be week 2. There's going to be a bunch of people who have completed everything they can beat in the Atlas. There's going to be encounters that they feel completely outclassed by, and these people are going to have regrets about the way that they've spec'd their Atlas. I think this is going to end up being something that's... I think that's going to end up being a bit of a mess here. So, yeah, I don't think I like the inability to respecialize. I think respecializing is something that would be a good point. Many maps in the fortress have ancient modifiers that add or modify the contents of the map. Any map with modifiers that add secondary content into a map also implicitly add that content to the map as well. And there's also a bunch of ancient modifiers that can be added elsewhere. Don't know what these are. These could be really significant. They could be really insignificant. The only one we've seen is a restriction to the shrines that can spawn in the area. So shrines cannot be elemental, and something else that was about them, 50% increased effect of certain shrines. I think it was something along those lines. Added new gateway maps with 2 new bosses that can be used to access different sections of the fortress, and new precursor tower maps have been added outside the fortress. So new precursor tower maps. I'm assuming that what this means is that the current 5 different types of towers you've got, that there's going to be more of them, which kind of surprises me. I thought that we had, like, towers are not that common. I thought that now you kind of don't need that many of them. Anyways, Burning Monolith has been moved into the fortress, and I was sad to see this because the Arbiter of Ash is just such a mess of a fight. I think it's like people almost always want to fight the Arbiter of Ash only when they completely outclass it. Only when they absolutely destroy them. That is my feeling as to exactly as the problems with that boss. So essentially, if you can't defeat this boss if you can't phase this boss in 10 seconds and ideally in 3, you probably don't engage it at all. And I think that's going to be a mess. Quest versions of the Crisis Fragments have been added to 2 Enigma chambers inside the fortress, added 2 new Citadel maps with 2 new bosses that drop keys to the Pinnacle boss. That could be interesting. They could be quite complicated bosses potentially, or alternately it might be just Tavakai and Who else would you put in from Act 4? Probably the Torvian, I guess. Torvian? Added the Arbiter of Divinity, and maps in the fortress can be alternatively completed by killing the Arbiter of Divinity 5 times to complete different sections of the fortress automatically. So you can rush the fortress if you've got the character power to do it, which I think is going to be really difficult. So yeah. One question that's come up in chat there, the question was thoughts on the absence of comments about companion damage buffs in the notes. I feel like companion damage is like minion stats generally don't get mentioned in the notes, or they're unreliably mentioned. Yeah, I do agree that they did say that they were going to triple them across the board, and I'm not sure what's missing there. That's bad if they're not tripled. Like people were only using companions, I think, to boost their own character. What's happening with map boss rush for the average player is a question that's been asked. I feel like if you're an average player, you probably don't want to do this, but if you are a very powerful player, very experienced player, you know exactly what you're doing, you might want to rush to Hilda. Hilda is the Atlas Master that is tied to map bosses, and she is southwest of the opening position. So you might want to rush to her. And in fact, that's what we'll see here. The Masters of the Atlas, you gain the ability to align with one of 3 masters each map that you open, and you will be able to progress these. Players can align with different masters, Jado of the Order of the Jinn, Monster Hunter Hilda, and each one will offer asymmetric bonuses, me not word good today, that can be swapped between maps at will, enabling build-defining bonuses. Each master has 12 nodes, of which 4 can be selected at once, and you can change your selection at any time. All 3 masters can be allocated at the same time with a quick select button to change between each master before you run a map. Now, my wording of this here, I read this as you can pick between them, but I think other people are interpreting them differently there. So yeah, that's sort of a bit unclear. Unlock each row of 3 nodes by performing missions for the masters, and that's important to note. So I think you get the first row immediately, and then you have to unlock the second subsequent ones. I could be misreading that, but that's my reading. Anyways, Hilda's thing that provides a 25% chance for a map boss to upgrade to an empowered map boss, that is something that's in her top row. So when you get there, that's good. Now, Doriani's science is unlocked by clearing a corruption nexus, and Hilda's campsite for Hilda's hunting, and Jado's spycraft is by completing an anomaly near the start. Next, there is a big section on Delirium, and I think we want to just quickly sort of go through some of the main changes that are taking place with Delirium, but I don't think we want to necessarily go into every single detail there. What I wanted to do, though, just quickly checking something related to stream health at the moment. And one sec, I've just got a comment here that's saying, telling me that I'm streaming in too high a quality. I don't think that is a problem there. I don't think that that's going to be a problem. Hopefully it's not. If there are some sorts of problems with relation to the quality of the stream, let me know if it's coming through crangled. That might just be a result of the settings that I've got at the moment. I've just changed my OBS settings to increase my stream qualities in general, because I had them set for before an internet upgrade in my area. So now with Delirium, a lot of discussion's gone on this channel already about the changes to Endgame in general. So I don't want to go into everything here, but I think some of the key things we've got here are that when you break a Delirium mirror, there is now a progress bar. It's going to show you how deep you are in the fog, how long you've got until the fog clears. The start of the Delirium bar represents your initial location of the Delirium mirror. The end represents the location of the map boss. So breaking a Delirium mirror is going to give you a hint as to which direction the map boss is in. That's something that I hadn't realized before. On top of this, this is going to feel very different in maps that have different layouts. So maps where it's a long way to the map boss are going to feel very different to maps where it's a short distance. There are now a new set of Delirium encounters that can be seen on the Delirium bar, and these will spawn at your feet when you reach certain points in the form of a colored mirror shard. When you walk into these mirror shards, you'll break them and you'll activate the new encounters. So this means that encounters like Kosis, they're going to be telegraphed and you're going to be able to opt into them. I think that one's going to be pretty substantial there. Direction of the map boss can be observed by looking at the fog effect and watching which way it's running. Moving in the direction of the fog will always lead you to the map boss. Now, here we have a couple of things that are substantial. Map bosses in Delirium, always 100% delirious. Damage and life bonus given to monsters from Delirium has been reduced. Added 5 new elite Delirium monsters. I'm assuming that these are mini Kosises or mini Omniphobias. Added a new sub-area, Loathsome Mire. This is going to drop 2 new amulet base types. Now what these are going to do, they're going to grant 2 instilled notables. However, there is a cost. -1 suffix or -1 prefix. I am also assuming that with this, that these special amulets, they are not only going to have -1 explicit modifier, but they're also going to have just as the implicit. It is just going to be that this can be an instilled twice. So based on that, I think these are still going to be solid, but they're not going to be as extraordinary as they sound. Just the idea of a double instillable amulet that's rare. It's going to be good, but it is a real cost that you're paying for it. I also think that people might try to fracture these to get +3 or +50 spirit on them. I feel like that could be incredibly strong on these bases if you're able to get quite lucky and get that there. Liquid emotions, these can now be used to craft additional mods on jewels. These work similarly to greater essences, each having a set of specific mods that will replace a random existing mod on the item. This is going to be really powerful. Jewel crafting, I think, is going to be one of those things that's really, really strong in 050 and potentially a big economic niche for people to fill. And this will apply both to your regular jewels, but also to your timeless jewels. There is a separate set of liquid emotions that can be applied to timeless jewels, and it just provides this quite deterministic way. And when I say quite deterministic, you're still dealing with 50-50 rolls, but they are going to be 50-50, and you know what the outcome is going to be. So there's a bunch of things that are there. After this, we have completing Delirium mirrors. Now has a chance to spawn grand mirrors on the atlas on a nearby map. These are going to create a duplicate of the map boss in the affected map. So you're going to be fighting 2 copies of the same map boss at the same time, and they're going to be 100% delirious, I believe. Complete these, you'll get access to the Trial of Madness, and this will then grant you access to the Simulacrum. So it's kind of quite clunky. You got to do Delirium mirror first. That spawns a grand mirror by chance. Grand mirror is then going to deterministically cause you to gain a Trial of Madness. Trial of Madness is then going to spawn a section of your atlas, which is going to include 1 Simulacrum. It's better than the old system, though. It is better than the old system. Mahoka's asking a question with respect to the Loathsome Mire bases. Is it locked on the original? Is it locked to the original amulet annoyance, or is it something you can instill yourself? My reading of it is that maybe you can instill it, but you could be right as well. Mahoka could very well be right. It could be that you get just the 2 that you're given, in which case it's quite a bit weaker than I was expecting. But that said, some good ones will exist. At that point, though, you're less likely to fracture them, and I feel like they're probably not at the point that you would ever consider Hinakora's lock fracturing them, but at least that's something that's worth considering as an option too. Rare and unique monsters in the Delirious maps have a set of new Delirious modifiers, giving them strange new abilities. This is scary. Oh, and also something that's important here, Delirium can actually exceed 100% now. Can be increased up to 200% here. And so after triggering the Trial of Madness, fog will spread to an area, including a locked Simulacrum. But then, yeah, once you're inside the fog, the entire map is 10% deli, and killing rare monsters in the map boss will increase the deliriousness of all maps in the fog. So you can get this sort of clump. It's essentially, this is exactly the mechanic of Astral Abes from Path of Exile 1 that's coming over to Path of Exile 2 here. And then we have these 3 new potent emotions we were just talking about. This can be used to craft powerful modifiers on jewels, not normally available in the jewel mod pool. And on top of that, They can also be used to instill a set of 16 new passive tree notables that are not normally available as well. Simulacrum has been condensed. It is now only 7 waves. That is a buff. That is a buff to fun, even though it is a nerf to how long the Simulacrum is going for. I think that is going to be a big, that one is going to be a big positive there. And then after that, we've got that completing the Simulacrum will give you a chance to fight Tangmazu. There is now also a new set of 10 ancient emotions that can drop if unlocked by the Atlas tree. These can be used to craft timeless jewels. There are 3 of these that can be used to craft special modifiers that otherwise are not normally available in the mod pool as well. So these are going to be really substantial, and these are probably going to be quite tricky to get because I'm assuming that the modifiers on the Atlas passive tree that allow these to spawn, I'm assuming that they also come with quite a bit of difficulty associated with them as well. After this, we have the some non-amulet Delirium uniques now drop with the Rageven Touch modifier, which allows them to be instilled. This is a buff. This is a substantial change. And those items, I think we'll have to make a list of them because they could be quite significant, I think. I think that could have more of an impact than people think, because just being able to instill something, there's a bunch of things that you can get on the passive tree that are quite powerful that are just scattered at far ends of the entire tree, and being able to avoid having to path and do a skill grimmage to something can be really substantial. Now, Breach is picking up the storyline that has come up in Path of Exile 1, and that includes the Monastery of the Keepers. So, again, I did that poll earlier. It seemed like most of you are Path of Exile 1 players, so you have a bit of a sense as to exactly what's going on there. But that's like the exact details of that. We'll have to find out the precise info, but presumably it's pretty much the same storyline. Make sure that you talk to Isla, especially when it seems like talking to her would be inappropriate, because that's the thing that's most fun. Now, Breach is exactly copying Path of Exile 1 Breach with 1 or 2 exceptions. One exception is the Genesis tree is going to be different, and the second exception of note is going to be some of the things that come up when we look a little bit further down. You'll see some other changes, but the first thing that's noticeable is that the differences to the Genesis tree, it's only creating jewelry and womb gifts, and currency. It's not creating uniques. It's not going to be the best source of unique items in the game. It's not going to be the best source of body armor in the game, but it will be a very strong source, maybe the best source of rings, amulets, and belts. So that's going to be really good. On top of that, also, it's going to create catalysts, and that's going to be really, really substantial. Now, we have these catalysts that are going to be added that can add quality modifiers to jewels. That's a big deal, but also catalysts are now exclusively from the tree. You're not getting these from killing breach monsters anymore. Breachstone splinters have this awkward friction with them where they turn into a womb gift when you stack them, and this can then be turned into the Genesis tree to create a breachstone, which just feels like busy work. Now, some areas of your atlas will have a breach domain on them. Now, the awkward thing here, I don't think I like something that's going on here. I think that this area is going to be inaccessible until you get a breachstone for it, and this is going to cause this awkwardness if you feel you're not strong enough to defeat some of these areas yet. I guess we'll find out exactly how that works in practice, but I'm a bit less excited by that there. The other change that's being made to Breach from Path of Exile 1 is a very minor one, and that is the nomenclature of the zones. So we have Breach Hives, Sky Hives, and Sky Fortresses. However, those of you that play Path of Exile 1, Breach Hives are what we call in-map Islet events. Sky Hives are what we call map fortress events, and Sky Fortresses are what we call Hivebrain Glands. So that's kind of clunky. Ritual. Now, in Ritual, there's going to be a new hub area, which is west. Maps around this area all contain Ritual encounters, and completing this will give you access to points for the Atlas tree for Ritual. And you'll also find there's a bunch of new points on the Atlas passive tree for Ritual, all totally different. I scroll a little bit, yep. After you complete a Ritual encounter in a map, you will get Locust pointing the way to the next altar. That is a huge, huge, huge improvement. All the items in the endgame ritual reward screen are now uniques and omens. So someone was saying that they thought this excludes Fraythorn. I think that person was right. I do think you're right about that. I think that the Fraythorn one probably does include Regal Orbs and down currency, rare items, magic items, stuff like that. I do think that's going to be the way that it works there. Killing the King in the Mist will now grant you access to another boss, or well, in this case, it's giving you access to the Rite of the Nameless, which is then a new mechanic in which you choose a series of 5 maps to complete a single continuous ritual. Monsters from each ritual, including the map boss, will reappear, so you're going to end up having to fight all 5 map bosses. Now, it sounds like you get complete agency over which 5 maps, which means that if there's a specific map boss that's really heinous to have in there, you can either avoid them, or if you're feeling like you want to show off, then you can intentionally have them in there. So that could be a bit of fun. I feel like the Rite of the Nameless feels like something you want to use an easy waystone for. At least that's my first thoughts on it. But that said, there might be reasons that that's not the case. When choosing maps for it, each map after the first will contain extra modifiers which affect the difficulty and rewards of the ritual. Each map will award 1 element of the key that is used to access the ritual pinnacle boss. Added new boss, the Queen in the Mist. She is only available after allocating a specific node on the Atlas tree, and this boss can drop 3 new corrupted idols. And then Fraythorn Rituals, there's a little quality of life thing there to stop you from losing your deferred items. Were you ever to go back there on a high level character, which is something I wasn't aware was an issue, but now that as soon as you hear about it, you're like, yeah, it makes sense that would actually be a potential sort of disaster waiting to happen there. Now, there's a whole section here about the temple going core. I have done other videos on this, and I also mentioned it quite a bit in today's video. I kind of want to skip through this, except to say that tier 4 rooms are going to be something to explore pretty early on. And on top of that, the other thing we're going to want to explore early on is going to be what you can do. Sorry. That's the drawback of streaming, is that I can't edit out things like that. Where you've just got to have a massive yawn. But one of the things that we'll want to do is just ascertain what those are and reassess all temple building strategies. But the temple you can't optimize all the fun out of the temple the way that you could in 040. So that's something that I am generally pretty happy with. I had a question, what time is it at the moment? It is 9:10 p.m, which is not normally me being tired time, but it is me being tired time on a day like today when I was up at like 6:30 this morning, and I've also had probably a few of these as well. So the rest of this is mostly the same. There's a bit of quality of life associated with Vile Beacons. That's an improvement. And I just find this one funny. Fate of the Val currency items now have a maximum stack size of 5,000 in the wildcard slots in the currency tab. So if you can get your hands on 5,000 Val cultivation orbs, then do. And then be sad that you didn't get them in time to use them on vertexes in 040 before they went legacy and you ended up not being able to afford them with all of that in the world. So a whole bunch of items are getting nerfed with Val cultivation orbs, and these are substantial. Atheri's Rule, Atheri's Splendor, the Covenant, Wrathpinth Globe, and Vertex are getting gutted, especially the Vertex. Vertex is just getting deleted from the game, and I personally won't miss it. Honestly, it's just the best item on every build imaginable, but some people will. That is getting completely and utterly gutted. I also agree that, yeah, replacing hallways with rooms was really important. And I feel like you could get a situation where your temple gets in a really bad spot with these changes, because you've just got so many roads that connect to emptiness. So I just really hope they've tested that, honestly. You also always need the ability to add new roads in, so yeah, really quite messy. Honestly, everything's a mess with it. This mechanic. But anyways, this is the changes that are being made here. Hateforge is getting buffed. But that's something I discussed in my day 19 video, which went up only like an hour and a half before this one, so before I started this stream. So you can have a look at that if you want. That was a summary, but I feel like that's already been covered. I wanted to cover the things that I missed in that more so, and also the things that are really hot button, because I keep getting asked questions about will Twister be dominant? Will grenades be dominant? And I think the answer is on day 2, yes. On day 9, probably not. They'll be fine. They'll be fine builds. They're good builds. If you like them, you should play them. But if you don't like them, I don't think they're going to be so oppressively good that they're going to have to be played. I think there's going to be more space to play what you like this league, but not for everyone. There's a lot of people who everything they like is going to feel non-viable. So for them, it's not going to be a good experience for in terms of your build diversity. But that is a section of the player base. There'll also be a lot of people where that's not the case. Oh yeah, totems are getting some crazy buffs in this. The Ancestral Bond stuff they've really decided to go with totems. They want to play into the ability of making it so that you can play totems fine. That is cool. Honestly, that's something that POE2 has needed, is a totem build. It's just a different play style. Now, with Abyss, everything is pretty much the same here. I do want to point out, though, something that needs a little bit of a mention here. So lithomatic runes, these are getting nerfed. And when we say a nerf, there'll be the odd contrived situation where the present status is stronger for the monster, i.e. weaker for the player. But in most cases, this is weaker for the monster, i.e. stronger for the player. But at the same time, Meteoric Demise Abyss modifier is getting changed. We don't know what adjusted means. This could mean it is going from tickling to one-shotting. It could mean that it is getting giga nerfed. I don't know which of the two it is. That's, really unclear. And Expedition, it's just come up in chat that the Recombinator is gone. So I wanted to kind of break into this a little bit because... Actually, no, let me start with a poll here, because this is one of those things where I think a poll is really appropriate. Did you use POE2 recombination in 040 5 times or more? I think I know which way this is going to go, but let's just check. I'm not going to interfere with the answers here by providing my thoughts on the matter yet. I know the sort of numbers I'm expecting, though. So for anyone watching this after the fact, I'm just asking those who are in chat, the sort of 100-something people in chat at the time that I'm recording this, to whether they use the Recombinator a lot or not. I'm going to arbitrarily define a lot as 5 times. And... So we got almost 50 votes there, and we actually got exactly 50 votes when I ended that, and it was 9-41. So, and actually a couple more people voted, so it was 9-43. 9 of you said yes, 43 of you said no. That's about exactly what I expected there. So, the trick with Recombinator was that what you wanted to do was buy an item that was crowded. It had a good base, it had an outstanding mod, and everything else on that mod was trash. Now, you could try and rescue that mod through the use of Orbs of Annulment, but it's just 1 in 6 to annul everything else. What you could do, you could actually get better than that through the Recombinator. Let's say that your item in question was a crossbow with a siege crossbow with +7 to the level of attack gems. It's got a very good and also very low weighted suffix on it. Now, what you would do is you would merge that in conjunction with you'd merge that together with a really bad prefix. So it has to be a low level prefix and one that's easy to roll. So you might have second bottom tier physical percent. You would then recombinate the two together, and you'd end up with a rare item that has bad prefix, good suffix 50% of the time. It would actually be 50% of the time plus change. And that's because you would have 50% contributed by the common mod and like 0.3% contributed by the rarer mod. And it would actually remember the base that the mod was, or that the rare mod is already on. So it was really, really strong, but it was also something that, yeah, was just the best way to get 2 starting mods on an item almost always. And if your inputs were expensive, you did have access to the recombination Omen, which is now just getting outright deleted from the game. But if it wasn't expensive, you didn't use that. You just used more attempts. So basically, recombination was really, really strong for starting crafts. It wasn't something that you used forever, and it's not like you could then just go and use omens afterwards. But there were a lot of things that you could do to end up making it into something that you could make it really strong. Anyways, it's getting nuked. This is going to be something that I think about 1 in 10 of the player base are going to really feel a loss, and 9 in 10 are going to be like, oh, yeah, GGG finally nerfed that thing that no one ever used. Whereas actually it wasn't something no one ever used. It was something that was just quite tricky to use well. I'm also curious whether this results in POE2 style recombination being deleted in Path of Exile 1 as well. Path of Exile 1 recombination is stronger than POE2 recomb, but the POE2 version has a couple of niches it's the best at, and those niches do exist in Path of Exile 1. So I guess we shall see. But the Omen of Recombination is being removed and deleted without compensation, just going splattergoifed. And I do think that the what Built Not Bought 69 is saying is that, yeah, Recombinator is going away. This is going to have an impact on trade economies quite a bit. Even if you weren't recombinating yourself, you're going to notice this. A bunch of items that you picked up that used to be worth something are not going to be worth anything anymore. And at the same time, some of them will be. Like, new items will be changed in terms of their value. I think the thing, Matakethu, with POE1 style recombination is it's not that the knowledge is impossible to find, it's that it is just so impossible to understand because it is so complex. Like, essentially, you need to have a solid grasp of Markov chains. Actually, more than I have, and I have a maths degree, but you need to have more of an understanding of Markov chains than I do, in order to really use them well. You can function without Markov chains just by intuition, and if your intuition is good enough, you will outperform the market on them. But it's something that's a bit crazy. Anyways, I think that the main reason this is gone is because they want to introduce grasping mails. And I think there's been another couple of hints of grasping mails being introduced. And I think they want to keep the presence of modifiers that are intended to be tied to specific items. I think they want to be much stricter about that in Path of Exile 2 than they were in Path of Exile 1. So if an item is not meant to, if a special base is not meant to be able to get a mod, I don't think they want it to get it. And also, they don't want you transferring off the time mods that require the meta mods. I don't think they want you to be able to transfer them off either without transforming the base that the item ends up on. So there are a bunch of things I think they just don't want to have happen. But anyways, Expedition, the other thing that's noticeable, I mentioned this in the daily summary video as well, that is that the Expedition explosives now wait to explode until most of the monsters from the previous explosive have been killed. I feel like this is going to be really good early in progression, and it's going to suck late progression. But we shall find out exactly how that one goes. Other endgame changes. Your Atlas in Standard has been wiped. Kaplow. Splat. Gone. Existing tablets and waystones will continue to work, so you continue your progress as normal, but you're going to need to go and do the Origins of Divinity storyline and play around with the entirety of the new fortress. Added support for searching to the Endgame Atlas map. You can now zoom further out, and there are now 2 versions of each pinnacle boss. I don't like the fact that there's only 2 of these. So this is the equivalent in Path of Exile 1 of giving you access to the quest version of the Steering Exarch and the regular version, but no Uber version. And that's my understanding of it. Or maybe it's the quest version and something harder than the normal version, but not as hard as the Uber version. I feel like this is going to be Like I feel like this is one of those spots where there's not enough granularity, and as a result, GGG will feel some pressure to make the repeatable versions manageable. When I think there should be something more aspirational in there. So I feel like that's something I'd like to see. I like to see this change at some point. And honestly, having an Uber version of these would be a really good 051, I think. Andrew Henson's asking, do I think that we'll get access to Grasping Mail because we can merge 60 rings on the tree? Exactly why I think we'll get that. Exactly why I think we'll get that, yeah. Tablets of the same type may now be used together to increase the amount of league content that is spawned. I think this is one of the most important lines in the entire thing. It doesn't look like it. It's one of those quiet achiever lines that does a lot more than it looks. So this is basically saying, okay, if you've got 3 Delirium tablets, you just have an uber Delirium encounter, and that replaces anything else. So you don't need to put any points into your ritual. You don't need to put any points into breach, nothing else, just Delirium. You can go hard on Delirium if that's what you want to do. And I think that some people are going to go hard on one mechanic. Some people are going to stay mixed for a while. And it's going to take us a while to work out which way is best. I think that's going to be all over the place. Each empty tablet slot now contributes to the amount of random non-tablet spawned league content in the area. For example, to the amount of essences you get. That means that if all tablet slots are full, you'll only see the league content from the tablets you are using. Oh, sorry, let me correct that. What I said before was wrong. For each empty tablet slot now contributes to the amount of random non-tablet spawned league content in the area. So if you've got Delirium blank, then that blank could be a breach. It gives you a percentage chance to have a breach in there, a percentage chance to have a ritual, a percentage chance to also have more of an enhancement to Delirium content. That's a bit different. That is different to what I was saying before. So it's going to boost those chances there. And this means that if all your tablet slots are full, you'll only see the league content from the tablets you are using. The intent of this change is to make sure you don't need to incomplete the Atlas tree for leagues you don't have any interest in running. And I don't know how this is going to play out. I feel like people are going to want to probably pick up the Atlas points in those other leagues anyway, and at least the people who are playing a bit more seriously. But maybe you're just going to go hard on breach early. So you're like, all right, early on, I'm just going to go nuts into breach, and then once I hit a point where any further real progress in breach is going to be slow, then maybe at that point you'll switch over to ritual. Or maybe switch over to something else at that point. Waystones must now be identified in order to activate them in the map device. That's sad. I don't see the point of that one. You can now use Orbs of Chance on precursor tablets. I don't think you will ever want to do this, but you've got the right to do it. It's not going to be a smart one. Some items and content now require you to specialize in them through Atlas passive skills. Now, this one's significant. This includes exceptional items. It seems like they cannot drop by default, and they can only drop if you specialize in them through Atlas passive skills. Fracturing orbs are the same, and also very important, basic and overseer precursor tablets. This last one is really big. Overseer precursor tablets are no longer available as early as they used to be, because they were extremely explosive for just shooting up a whole bunch of tiers quickly. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. Noobkaka's got an interesting point in chat there that going to the ocean early and doing expedition is going to disrupt your ability to farm Atlas passive points. There's going to be this tension in 050. That's something I hadn't thought of. That tension is right. That is going to be real. That's going to be a complete and utter mess early on. Tablets can't be used on uniques anymore, and league-specific tablets no longer drop from certain places. Lord-based chances for essences as Merry Spirits, Shrines, Strongboxes, Summoning Circles, and Rogue Exiles, because there's a much larger possible chance available to increase them, and that is on the Atlas tree. I think this is something I thought was going to be the case when they mentioned that you can get every single point. They have to balance the fact that you can get every point, and the way that they balance it is by emptyifying the maps without the Atlas. So that's going to be something really, really significant there. Alice passives that reference maps with powerful map bosses now work with Overseer precursor tablets and other sources of powerful map bosses, not just ones that are already naturally there. Adjusted the values of general precursor tablet modifiers to be similar to the same type of bonuses granted by waystones. This, I think, is quite a buff. And they're also reducing the roll variance of these modifiers. I would definitely have to look into this. The thing I hate is the whole Arbiter of Ash gating 4 mod maps. Arbiter of Ash was crashing me when I was running him, so I couldn't actually beat him in 040. And that was something that was like, I would have, if 040 had been a better league, I would have bought a carry. But that was about the time that I was first bouncing from the main league into the private league and then quickly bouncing from the private league as well. So I would have gotten around it through the use of a carry service, but that was just a really disruptive thing that was going on. Like every time that I was fighting Arbiter, I was getting a crash, like quite early in the second phase. So yeah, I feel like this is a really weird, really weird setup there. Certain modifiers can no longer roll on waystones. This is like a bunch of modifiers in general are changing. Like there's a whole section here actually on waystone modifiers. I think we should just go through the core of this. The absolute core of these changes is that map modifiers are changing, and also your agency over them is through the use of omens is being reworked as well. Those omens are intended to be the filler mods. They're the junk, honestly. They're the complete and utter junk that you're getting that have to come up somewhere. I do think that the comments coming up about map juicing feeling insufficient in 040, that was just because the temple was making it so that like things that have always been loot, like Divine Orbs and Perfect Chaos and Perfect Exalts, they were not loot. They were just trash. Auron is asking, what's the deal with carry services now? TFT is back. TFT is back under new management. It's most of the people that weren't involved in the collapse of it, and TFT will still it's still there. People will still use it because they just ruthlessly purge scammers in a way that no one else does. And so there have been a couple of alternate groups that have set up alternatives to TFT, and they've generally all imploded because they've just been like scammer magnets. And that's been unfortunate. I wouldn't mind seeing something that was an alternative to TFT. I don't like one guild having so much power in the trade league economy, but no one else has had the integrity, honestly. Global 820 is a bit like Global 820 is a bit of a scammer risk as well. So there's a bunch of things that are messy with it all. Like it's not a problem to get scammed on like a Sanctum carry. Sanctum carry is a Trial of the Sectors carry. Like where you might pay 40 exalts if it's early, or like a bit later you might pay a divine, and that's not all. Whatever that ends up being next league, who knows what the currency is going to be, because they're making big changes to divines. We'll find out all of that there, but it's basically it's the most trustworthy spot still remains TFT. For getting carry services, and that's going to be the thing. French Ferret, GGG have a policy of not investigating player disputes very much, and that is the real problem. That's the reason that TFT took over from the old system, which was the GGG forums, forum vouch threads. That was where we started there. So it's all sort of messy there. That's the reason that a guild was going to be able to replace it. There's kind of no one else that would. Like, I could imagine one of the commercial places, like either Max Roller Mobalytics, trying to get into it, but they'd want money for it. And I don't think that GGG would like someone monetizing something like that. But I can't see any other way that you could do it without monetization, without like a monthly fee or something like that. And the playbase aren't going to willingly play that. It's going to feel too much like paying for advantages, but no one's going to act as an umpire without money, except for people that are obsessed nerds in a game. And that was what TFT were, really. And Discord's functionality is better, except for the fact that Discord, you can delete things in Discord really easily. And so that's one of the other things that makes it really tough. But in any case, if you're going to do services, I would say that the safest place to, if you don't care if you get scammed, then use Global 820. If you are concerned about the risk of getting scammed, then TFT is going to be the answer. Until someone else, until some other in-game organization of obsessed nerds that that are genuinely determined to do an enormous amount of work in order to dominate the standard economy of one of the two games, until something like that emerges, I don't think there's going to be an alternative, really. Every alternative that's tried, it's just too much work, and they've all collapsed. Anyways, all of that out of the way, we have all these changes that are taking place are going to reduce some of the agency you had over rolling waystones, and also reduce some of the reasons that some waystones are much more lucrative than others. So there's less of that sense. Like in Path of Exile 1, you sort of see this a bit more, where originator maps in particular, they can be way more lucrative than a normal map. Path of Exile 2, there is still some differential between maps, and it can be real, but I don't think it scales up quite as far off there. Half the bonus quantity half the bonus of quantity that comes, and the experience gain that's provided by monster effectiveness. So this is from Atsuri's Temple. This is another one of the temple nerfs. There are a lot of them. Snake is getting nerfed, but this is just another stomp on the snack in order to deal with some of the problems that they caused in 040. This is that stuff I was talking about, agency of mods that you can roll on maps, and up to 3 of the omens can be used simultaneously. These are the fillers. This is the trash loot inside your this is the trash loot inside your ritual windows now. Where in the past it was the rare items and the regal orbs, now it's this. These are replacing it there. Half the damage as extra buffs that are granted from various shrines. I am sad about these because there's those cool scepters that give you them permanently, but they're being nerfed. Completion of fixed locations on the Atlas is now shared with party members. I think that's really strong in the Fortress. I think that's something that's going to make party play way better in the Fortress if you're interested in party play. And with the addition of the more varied content on the Atlas map, the size of content indicators has been buffed. This is huge. This one is huge, huge, huge. And Waystones have received new 2D art, which doesn't matter very much. Now, there's a number of changes that are taking place to the campaign. These got their own video, which we did a discussion of recently on this channel, but there's a whole bunch of things that are going on here. The most significant one, I mentioned this in my summary today, is that I don't think you can get rank 9 skill gems reliably in Act 2 anymore. And this is going to be pain. This one is going to be really painful here. If you've got to do Jamana without access to rank 9 gems, I think that's going to be awful. Not necessarily for everyone, but there'll be builds that hate this. Anyways, the other thing that's noticeable here is the waterways levers are going to be nerfed, so they're quicker, and that will be less ridiculous. Aron of Anorn is asking, what's the fastest way to gain XP now? I think just playing the game normally instead of like the brokenness that was Temple. I think it will just be mapping. There'll just be a lot less players that reach level 100. A lot less. And so yeah, monster density being nerfed in the second half of the campaign, I think this is going to end up being a bad choice. Like this is going to be something that speedrunners love. Speedrunners are going to be like, oh yeah, fantastic. But I have a feeling that this is going to hurt casual players quite a bit. I say that because the casual players are the ones who who kill more monsters normally. Like they kill the monsters that are presented to them, and that builds up the gear. And the fact that they've got more gear because they kill more monsters than a veteran player makes up for their mistakes that they're making in terms of gearing their character, building their character. They're making a bunch of mistakes. They're intrinsically a lot weaker, but they're making up for it by killing more monsters. Well, now they're not going to be killing as many more monsters. So that might be a bit messier there. Player changes, bleed. I discussed this in the other video. Bleed is getting nerfed on players because we don't have the agency to reliably remove it. Most notably, you don't have the agency with the charm system to ignore a bleed that's small. You are forced to use your charm. You don't have any agency over it. Your charm is used automatically for you. And what that means is that you then don't necessarily have that charm there when you really need it. Whereas in Path of Exile 1, when you need your anti-bleed cleanse flask early on, you can count on it being there pretty much. Your maximum runic ward is now added to your starting honor when beginning a trial. This is fantastic for like once you actually get some runic ward, which you probably won't have the first time you do it. Yeah. Marikechu is asking, like, will this nerf to monster density in the second half of the campaign? Will this have a negative effect on speedrunners? I think speedrunners are pretty good at managing their own XP. So I think they're going to be fine. This is just a keyword change. Leech instances, though, this is a big deal. This is a big deal. So when multiple leech instances are active, only the top one recovers you life, or only the top one for each resource actually applies. That's a very big deal. And there's a bunch of other changes to leech. The main thing is that leech resistance on monsters is getting nerfed pretty much everywhere. And so what this is going to mean, if you fire into a pack, you're going to leech less life than you would have prior to the changes. That's because you might be hitting 20 different monsters for 80,000 damage each. Under the old system, that would have been 20 separate instances of leech, of which the top 5 would have applied. Whereas now you're going to get one instance of leech, and it's just going to be the cap, which was 80,000 damage previously, but now it's 40,000 damage. Even though your amount of life that you leech will be larger than it was in the past, that's still not going to end up making up for it. So yeah, leech is being nerfed when you're firing against packs. Against bosses, it should still be fine. Monster leech resistance is being nerfed across the board. We don't have numbers on that. After this, the deflect chance. The deflect chance has been buffed if you had a lot of deflect and nerfed if you had a small amount. And this requires some serious numbers to get this right. I've got to seriously analyze this one. I don't want to just give a quick ballpark figure on this, just that it will end up feeling a lot better later on. And Matikechu is saying leech slowly creeping towards the convoluted area of POE1. I think it's actually the opposite. I think this is the big simplification of of leech. Even though like this is a simpler system than existed previously, it's also a new system, so you don't know it yet. But it's simpler than it was. Vile Pact will come to. Vile Pact is something we'll discuss in its entirety when we get there. That shouldn't be too long, I don't think. I think we're quite close to that. Yeah, there is a graph that's bouncing around about leech, and generally, I think one of the other things, sorry, about deflection. I think one of the other things with deflection is that if you can inflict blind on enemies, that nerfs their accuracy substantially, especially if you spec into it. And I feel like that's something that's not really getting talked about all that much with it. So I think if you get blind with 50% increased effect, I think that's equivalent to having. Let me just do some quick numbers in my head. I believe that's equivalent to having 43% more deflection on your character. If you have inflicted blind, and that blind is augmented by that 50% cluster that exists on the tree. So that's something I think you should keep in mind. 43% more deflection is not a small amount. So blind is really strong there. I feel like blind is something that people underrate how good it is. And yeah, like some people in chat are saying that it's mandatory. Yeah, I think they're right. Now we have no longer delaying. So there's a couple of things here that are complex. So parry, shield block, and resonating shield no longer apply heavy stun buildup from decaying longer than expected. This is most impactful on parry, honestly. And that's because parry is the one that you are most likely to use for a short period of time, then cease using for a while. And so like you can do the same thing with shield block and resonating shield, but parry is the main one of them. And this is going to be pretty substantial. When you successfully parry a monster, it's no longer going to stuff up your ability to dodge future stuns as badly as it does now. So this is quite a substantial bonus if you're interested in that active play style that parry has. Shield block also has the same optional active play style, but shield block feels it's less integrated into your core combat routine than parry tends to be. Parry is really aggressively used. And melee attacks can now only apply splash damage once per damaging area. This is going to be bad on a few things. I think this is bad on shield wall, and I also think that this is bad on a few random things that we're not going to think of here. Some attacks create multiple damaging areas during use. For example, Whirling Assault creates multiple damaging areas around you as you move, but each one of them is only applying splash damage once per area. And then after this, we've got when minions are removed due to resources changing, younger minions are now prioritized for removal. This is a buff. This is quite substantial. Quality of life's the wrong term. Like this is a power buff, but it's it will feel like quality of life. Invincible minions, nothing particularly important here. So here's the wording. Stats worded as when you collect a remnant. This, I believe that this does not apply to the Acolyte of Cheul. I don't think it uses this word. That's the Acolyte of Cheul's Into the Breach skill. I don't think it uses this word, so you can share around those remnants. But that needs to be tested in-game. Honestly, that needs to be tested in-game. New content and features. There's a whole bunch of new things that we already knew. So Martial Artist and Spirit Walker. We don't know the details of Martial Artist. I wouldn't mind getting them tomorrow, GGG. If you're listening to this, you probably aren't because it's 12:45 your time. Spirit Walker, though, this one has got a bunch of cool stuff with it that we've already discussed extensively. I did a past video on this. And then after this, we've got all of these new names of lineage supports. Nothing really to say about them. And then uniques, we've got the new names of them. So Beric's Grip, Beric's Pass, these are POE1 items that are kind of low priority there. Beric's Respite, we talked about right at the start. If this captures the identity that it has in Path of Exile 1, which is that upon killing an enemy that is ignited and or shocked, transfer a copy of that ignite and or shock to all nearby enemies. If it does copy that in some form, it could be explosively good. We need to look to see exactly what it does when it's found in game, but Beric's Respite has me excited. Brutus's Lead Sprinkler has me excited. Another Path of Exile 1 item that's being ported over. This is a mace that deals a tremendous amount of fire damage based upon your character's strength, and it is actually tremendous. This is one of the best strength stacking items that's been revealed so far. I'm just looking for other items. Facebreaker's already known. Joffrey's Sanctuary is a strength intelligence armor, and it provides a bunch of provides a bunch of effects based upon attributes. And I don't think this is going to translate very well to Path of Exile 2 unless they've decided to go nuts with the stats on it. Lawweave is a Path of Exile item, and it just has a lot of different small stats that all add up. It's actually quite a powerful one, and be interesting to see if they've transferred it across in good state. Mageblood is next. Mageblood is Mageblood is a completely busted item in Path of Exile 1, so we'll see exactly what they do. There's definitely going to be chase, there's going to be crazy rare, and we'll have to find out whether they bring it across in a way that does justice to this busted item. It is substantially better than Headhunter and Calandra's Touch, which are both in Path of Exile 1 as well, and that are about as good there as they are here. Like, they're both really good items, but Mageblood is miles better. Miles better. And then in terms of other items here, Split Personality is a jewel in Path of Exile 1. It's probably also the same here. It's very, very solid endgame jewel for certain builds. It's not for every build, but it does some serious things. And then then we have Voices, which has already been teased and is a huge power boost. Like, this is an actual mandatory item unless we're fundamentally understanding this item wrong. This is a mandatory item for people to use. Horza3106 is asking if Mageblood is just charms are permanently active, how do we feel about it? we already have that. We've got Perfidy. Perfidy is not particularly good. It's got to be something different to Charms. It's got to be something better. If it's intended to catch the legacy of Path of Exile 1's Mage Blood, it needs to be different to that. Now, we have the Fragment tab is available. That is substantial. Build guides are available. That is substantial. Trade market searching is available. That is substantial. And then we have the Ascendancy changes. Now, a lot of people were expecting big balance changes because balance felt like it was getting stale in 040. They certainly haven't done a big balance shift here. They have done a couple of nerfs to attack builds. They've nerfed the most outlying overpowered spell build. That's through the indirect effect of the Comet, the nerfs to Leech, the way that they apply to Comet's mana recovery. So they've done that to cast on Critical Strike Comet. And otherwise, a lot of the builds are really strong. So Twisters still seem really strong. Grenades feel really strong early on. And a lot of the Titan type builds just feel like they're going to be still fine here. I think that'll be there's basically just a lot of stuff is really solid. Acolyte of Chayula, they're changing the nodes that are being nerfed by the changes to Leech, and I just don't think that this is enough. Honestly, I do not think that these are gaining enough. The ones that recover your energy shield, the ones that recover your mana are going to feel terrible. The ones that recover your life are not very good. Yeah, basically not impressed with this one here at all. Someone's commented that it was pragmatism, not perfidy, on the charms for Mage Blood, where I had two items confused. Pragmatism's correct, yeah. Pragmatism is the item. We have a big Divine Sync coming, so don't worry. People are talking about a Divine Sync. We have a big one of those coming. It's actually one of the most substantial things in the entirety of these patch notes, is the changes that are being made to Divine Syncs. They are monstrously big. Monstrously big. And I think we're not going to have any problems unless they decided to make Divine Orbs way more common. They say they're making them more common, but we don't know how much more so. And if they have made them much more common, then the new chase currency is probably Perfect Chaos, maybe Perfect Exalts, or maybe a Nulls. Be one of those. So Blood Mage is next. Blood Mage looks like it's being buffed. It is not being buffed. This is compensatory for the changes to the way Leech works. And I think this leaves Blood Mage about where it is now. On top of that, Blood Mage there's just a bunch of juggling around of things on the passive tree. But the main thing is that the ability to burst recover life, and in order to fuel Comet Storms, that is being decreased in general across the board. We'll come to the stuff about the economic stuff later on, once we get down to the spot with the Divine Orb section. Chronomancer, this was discussed earlier, except for Inevitable Agony. There's some additional details here. Inevitable Agony is 25%, but is no longer decreased by curse resistance, which in practice is not much change. It means it's a bit worse against tanky rares than it used to be. It's also better on a bunch of things here. Gemling Legionnaire is just the change that were already announced. Pathfinder is getting nerfed, but not enough for Poison Burst Arrow to become bad. Poison Burst Arrow is getting nerfed, but it is not getting crushed or anything like it. And Witch Hunter is getting what looks like a nerf, but I think this is just compensatory to make it so that Obsessive Rituals, it's meant to tread water with where it is. And that's because you're going to get more armor and evasion rating on your gear. So this is compensatory to keep it where it is overall. Okay, we're going to jump into the passive tree changes in a sec. I am, however, going to go and quickly grab myself a drink. So a quick AFK at this point. And I think that means that on YouTube, I can actually run an ad at this point. Yes, I will do that. So I'll be back shortly. May your Varlorbs have interesting results while I do so. Alrighty, all. Sorry about that. I am just back at this point, and yeah, saying a bit surprising that I didn't already have a drink. I did already have a drink, but unfortunately, they don't last forever. So that was the reason. Went to get another one there. Okay, so passive tree changes next. There's a bunch of companion themed passive skills, 19 of them. Now, someone mentioned earlier that there was nothing in the passive in the patch notes about changes, the buffs that were promised to companion damage. And I'm hoping that that is not the way they're addressing that. I'm hoping that they're not addressing it just through saying, oh yeah, now you can get 200% increased companion damage on new nodes on the tree. But that may well be what they're doing. I guess we'll find out on that. There are a bunch of new life recoup speed passive skills being added to the tree, and this is going to mean that life recoup is better now for everyone who is not playing a Chronomancer. Chronomancer is definitely going to be worse because they had a node that was really good for recoup, but at the same time, that was something that was kind of not very good when it was played straight, but it was kind of busted in certain combo uses. Ancestral Bond is getting reworked completely. This is cool. So placing totems has no cost, does not require consuming charges, but they will reserve 75 spirit each, and it will double the totem limit instead of removing it completely. This is just cool. I really like this item. I really, really like this item. Not item, keystone. I think it just does a lot of cool stuff. The vast majority of people don't want this effect, but it does something really good for some people. Trusted Kinship makes your companions more efficient, 30% more reservation efficiency, which is not small, and 20% less reservation efficiency of non-companion skills, which is also painful for those. So if you're wanting to run custom critical alongside your companions, you probably don't want this. But if you're willing to go a bit nuts with foregoing everything else, Trusted Kinship is going to be your friend. It also no longer wrecks your defenses, and also no longer transfers a lot of them to your companions. Now, Val Pact is next. So let's get the exact current wording of Val Pact for the purposes of this, because POE2 wiki, we're going to go over the old Val Pact. And once we've got that, we will then bring it into here. Oh, it's just Life Leech is instant, cannot use Life Flasks. Okay, so current wording. Life Leech is instant, cannot use Life Flasks. New wording. 50% more amount of Life Leeched, 67% less Life Leech speed, cannot recover life other than from Leech, and Life Leech effects are not removed when unreserved life is filled. So this is granting you Overleech at the expense of slower and longer Leech, and at the expense of you not being able to gain life from non-Leech effects. The big problem with this is ground dots. Ground dots are going to be crushing for this. Absolutely, absolutely crushing when it comes to this setup. This is going to really, really feel painful. And I think that's going to feel absolutely awful there. I don't think I want Vile Pact in pretty much any situation. Like there's the odd time it's going to be good in a lot of combats, and then it's going to be absolutely awful in a few. And I feel like ground dots are common enough that it's going to kind of mess you up a bit. And yeah, I just feel like this is just going to feel really, really dubious at points. There are some ground dots that have no recovery on them, but there are also some that don't. And the ones that don't tend to be the more dangerous ones if you're on top of your game, if you're aware of them. Also, losing access to life flasks or to life recovery from flasks is painful too. So yeah, I'm not sold on Vile Pact. I hope to be wrong. I hope people manage to find ways to make this work, but I won't be one of them because I'm not inspired to try it out. 67% less life leech speed. So it's essentially you're getting 50% more life, but you're getting it all at half the speed. It is going to be over quite a protracted period of time. But I'm very much not sold on it. Very, very much not sold on it. Hey, Pipos, thank you. Reform barrier cluster has been removed. Trying to place which one that is. I'm going to quickly look that one up. That's formed barrier. What are we here? Oh, we're not finding it. Oh, there we are. Oh, your energy shield recharge starts out of turn. Okay, that's the reason it's being removed. It allows this is the notable that allows your energy shield to start upon your minions being revived. So that's one of the nasty ones there. Now, it's worth noting that there's a couple of things here that are being moved on the passive tree. This is significant. Things getting moved, not connecting to a dual socket often means they're going to be +1 point to take. So I think you want to consider that in mind. Keep that in mind when you're planning your builds, and just think that some of these nodes, if they're marginal nodes, they might end up not being worth it anymore. They're 1 more point than they used to be, because you're already probably going to the duel, and that's going to be an awkward one. Good questions come up in chat there that I should just give an answer to there. Where is the patch notes? There you go. I probably should have them down in the description of this video, but that's the patch notes. You can always find them on the Path of Exile website just by going into the forums and forums index, and then it'll be early access patch notes. Mahuka's asking, yeah, what's going to happen with existing Chronomancer builds? They just have to be rebuilt completely. I feel like the Chronomancer, even though it's mostly the same ascendancy, the things people were doing with it were so heavily based upon small broken elements of it that it's basically a different thing entirely. BWD is asking, can we get a karaoke stream if you find a Mage Blood in week 1 of the league? So the reason I can't do a karaoke stream, certainly not on YouTube, is because of just the way that copyright works. It's kind of like there's really strict rules against using other people's music, and that's one of the reasons that people tend to use things that are public domain as much as they do. And like most AI stuff is public domain. It's something that no one has a copyright over, and that ends up being something you can do that is kind of otherwise really hard. So there are limited ways you can. There are limited situations in which you can do it, but if it's copyrighted music, you just want to avoid it, because a whole lot of the record studios, they pay people, like they pay lawyers whose job it is to basically purge anyone that uses their music in anything derivative like that. So yeah, you kind of can't do it. Mage Blood predictions, I don't have any. And another question that's come up is, any changes that really excite me so far? I think that sometimes it is the nerfs that can be exciting, and the fact that the snake temples are gone actually excites me more than anything else. It's like trying to solve the temple without the snakes. Sounds like it could be a bit of fun. And otherwise, I think there's just the fact that a bunch of the builds that were solid known contenders are still solid known contenders. Like, especially the early starters that might fall off, like your grenades and tornadoes, I think are looking pretty good. And now just kind of going through the rest of this here, we've got I think a lot of what we're going to see here, there's a whole sea of faster start of energy shield recharge nerfs. And where's the other one here? Grants faster start of energy shield recharge instead of energy shield recharge rate. The key thing you're going to notice here is that energy shield recharge rate as a stat is getting obliterated. Now, this means that if you're reliant upon energy shield as your character's primary defense, you are not going to have burst recovery in almost any situations there. You're not going to have that anymore. You're just going to get slow recovery instead. And that's really important to play around with and to plan around, because some of the sorts of bursts that you've used in the past to recover your stats are just not going to be available anymore. And then there's a whole bunch of A whole bunch of other stuff. This looks terrible here, but I think there's another node that actually picks up the 100% increase in local defenses on your shield. So that's fine. And people are like, if I get a mirror or a Mage Blood week 1, I have to do a full Atsuri cosplay. The problem with doing a full Atsuri cosplay is that stuff's expensive and tough to find, especially in my size. I was looking into the Gustav cosplay at some point last year, and they were just absurdly expensive, like sort of 550 Australian or something like that. So yeah, everything that burst recovers energy shield is nerfed. And that's going to be a big thing as we go through all the changes to the passive tree. In fact, that is the most decisive thing. Like this is the defenses rebalance. Modest buffs to energy shield, slightly bigger buffs actually to evasion, and energy shield is now no longer going to be able to burst recover. I think that now there are 6 combinations of defenses. So you can either go pure energy shield evasion hybrid, pure evasion, evasion armor hybrid, pure armor, or armor energy shield. Of these, armor energy shield hybrid is trash, actual trash, and armor evasion feels like it's the weakest of the remainder, but I do think the other 4 are all fine. I am considering league starting Disciple of Rashta, which it was such a quiet achiever last league. I'm also considering league starting Twisters, which I'd have to learn, and I'm also considering league starting Grenades again, because Grenades were fun last league. Grenades were a lot of fun, and they get going really fast. I really like how quickly they get going. I feel like Disciple of Rashta is getting slept on a bit because you've still got all your buffer from Energy Shield. Like, Energy Shield is still defensively strong. You just need the ability to get out of combat to recover quickly. And I think that's really good. Arawn of Anorn, the armor applies to elemental damage. We don't have evidence of that either way yet. I'm expecting we will see more. So this is asking about armor applying to elemental damage. I think we will see more of it on there, but we've got to get the full tray. I will expect into Gemling. I don't have any plans to. And one sec, I've just got to deal with my my phone. When I said when I named that ascendancy, I won't name it. It sounded like a Clanker assistant that my phone has in it, and that phone then was like, "Oh, better listen. That could be me." But no, we're talking about the Legionnaire ascendancy. The first word of that is close enough to the name of the Clanker assistant. The Google one. And yeah, so that was a bit silly. I just saw my phone light up and start going, "Oh, we've heard one of our keywords." No, you hadn't. You're hallucinating. Now going through here, I really agree with Mickey Man there that Gemling is unsolved as yet, unsolvable, not just unsolved, but unsolvable as yet, because we're missing all the information. But within a week, people will have found skills to make it sing. I think that's right. You could conceivably make a plan for Gemling, because Gemling was quite strong with stat stacking in the past. I feel like you could probably make a grenade build to start with that then respecs into something in like with Gemling and Astromantis at some point. I feel like that could be done. One of the most important things here, while we're looking at the changes that are being made to the passive tree, is the small nodes nerfs for ES. So small passives that grant faster start of energy shield recharge, they're now 6%, no longer 15%. And energy shield recharge rate, these have been completely nuked and replaced by faster start of energy shield recharge. So this combination here is crushing for energy shield's recovery, not affecting the energy shield buffer. I think that the amount of energy shield buffer you can get is only down by 10%, but everything else about it is getting hit really hard there. And then we have this life leech nodes are getting nerfed a little bit, but that's not that substantial. Yeah, basically that's the things with the passive tree. It's overwhelmingly energy shield. There's a couple other little things there, but basically everything about ES recovery is gutted. And that is the story of this cluster of the tree. And honestly, in many ways, it's one of the main stories of this patch note from a character balance perspective. Now, skill balance is all over the place. There's a couple of things here, but I want to just point out that the most significant things. Ignites inflicted on targets by oil ground that is ignited. This can no longer compound. This is crushing for Wyvern builds and for certain Wyvern builds and for certain grenade builds, I believe. I still think they're fine though. I still think that there will be something that's functioning, but it's just going to have to be built differently. And then there's a bunch of like little tiny stuff. Comment, I think we mentioned at the start, the very start, people may have rewinded, but it's taking a 5 to 24% damage nerf. This is your gem level 20. That's 5% if you are not infused, 24% if you are. That wouldn't be crushing, but the thing that might be crushing is the capacity to regenerate whatever resource you spent to trigger Comet through Cast on Critical Strike. You might really struggle to recover that resource as fast as just spending it. That, I think, is the real problem there. Metakechu, the reason they're not having 100% deflection chance is that 100% deflection chance would just be like, it's not the identity of evasion that you have such a like tremendous amount of you have a tremendous amount of flat damage mitigation. I don't think it fits it at all. Yeah, CI builds will now have to play the game. I like them. I like Sakayan's comment there. CI builds will now have to play the game. That is true. Like basically, you can't ignore threats if you're running hard content. If you're running easy content, you can probably still completely be brain off. But if you're running hard content and you're like sort of paying very little attention, I think you're not going to notice it. Cull the Weak is getting a big buff here. This is the low-level gem that was added late to the Huntress because everyone was complaining about not being able to generate frenzy charges at low level, and this was an alternative to parry. So you've still got parry disengage as a combo to gain a frenzy charge, and then you could spend that on Lightning Sphere or whatever. But Cull the Weak was an alternative. It allows you to kill an enemy that is in cull range. This is getting massively buffed, massively buffed, and it's just miles better than it used to be. This should make it into something that's quite functional now. And then we have Earthquake's getting a buff, but not enough. There is another melee skill later that's getting a bigger buff, and that is Rolling Magma. Sorry, not Rolling Magma, Rolling Slam, sorry, Rolling Slam. And as we go through here, there's a few other changes that matter, but the Freezing Salvo is getting nerfed pretty hard here. It's not crushing, but it hurts. It definitely hurts. So this is going from more magnitude of chill and freeze. So you're going from 207 to 168% base. That's like a 20% nerf, give or take a sec. Gathering Storm, if you can perfectly time this, and then it will explode a Tempest Spell on hit. Now, only one Tempest Spell effectively explodes for this, and it will create a massive shockwave when that happens. This requires perfect timing, so it's going to be something that's kind of nuts when you can pull it off. I think this is for blue packs. I feel like this is intended to be a demonstrate your mastery of the quick time event on a blue pack and just delete it in one shot. And possibly even delete it, even if you're in progression content, like you're not in easy clear content. Ghost Dance is next. Ghost Dance is getting nerfed pretty hard here, but because there's so few sources of burst recovery, I think it's actually still strong. I feel like the more that I think about this, the more I think you are going to use this if you're playing a build that has a decent amount of evasion and a small amount of energy shield. If you've got a decent amount of evasion, small amount of energy shield, Ghost Dance is looking better than it was. Oh, sorry, it's looking worse than it was before, but still looking better than it looks. If you have a large amount of shield and a small amount of evasion, I don't think you want this. I think it is very much only for more energy shield than more investment into shield than you have into evasion. Sorry, more investment into evasion than you have in shield. Let me just re-say that entirely. If you invest more into evasion than you do into energy shield, Ghost Dance is good. if you can spare the 30 spirit. It's not great, so it's not like you have to spend the 30 spirit on it, but if you can spare the 30 spirit, it's worth it. If you are not investing heavily into evasion, then it's not worth it, even if you are heavily invested into shield and modestly into evasion. I don't think it works out there. Hopefully that was clear as mud. Lunar Blessing, your moonbeams are no longer melee skills. This hurts. All these shield skills, 5 to 7 instead of 6 to 8. This is not a nerf. This looks like a nerf, but the shield's getting buffed elsewhere, and it's compensatory overall. Rampage Bear, I think, is fine. I don't think Rampage Bear is copping anything much, is it? And I don't think Bone Cage is getting changes either. And then we had the just looking for the other things that mattered. Poison Burst Arrow, this is nerfed but not deleted. This is still perfectly fine. It is worse than it was, but it's not getting hit hard. Even with the changes Pathfinder compounding with this, you will still be fine. Pounce is getting nerfed. It's still fine. Still absolutely and positively fine. Ravenous Swarm, Rend, looking for the other things. Yeah, there's Rolling Slam. I keep getting that confused with Rolling Magma. But this does the same damage it used to, give or take. It's actually slightly more damage than it used to do, but very close. But it's plus 1 second instead of 1.5 seconds. It is just miles better. Miles better than it was. It's maybe still not good enough, but it is better than it was. Shield Wall is getting a buff. Oh, sorry, is getting roughly a buff overall because you're going to have more armor on your shield. Maybe not at the very highest levels. But the key thing is that whilst it's doing more damage, I think this one's hit hard by the changes to shotgunning. So I think that may actually end up ending up being worse there. And is going through here. We've got Snipe is getting substantial boost to damage. At least it's not really substantial. It felt like substantial, but it's not. Like it feels like they're just, can we end this in 6-7? Actually, Icy Blast is less damage now. It has a higher top end, but it's a lower bottom end. And just check both ends of this damage. Yeah, actually, Snipe is actually worse than it was. Better. Good to have reread that. When I was going through this for the first time on Twitch, I misread that and I thought it was actually a buff. No, it's a nerf, but it's not massive. Tame Beast. Okay, so questions came up about companions earlier. Summon Beasts now deal 40% more damage at gem level 9, 84% more at gem level 20, so presumably maybe 100% more at high gem level. I think that's new, so that may actually be the buff to companions, your beasts and the like there. Tempest Bell is getting buffed enormously, absolutely enormously. And the Thrashing Vine stuff is fine. Like, it's interesting that the plant stuff is surviving fine. So another safe starter is Druids with plants or Disciple of Varashta with plants. These both work, and that's another safe starter to add to the cluster. Support changes. So seals are now shared. That probably doesn't matter all that much. Like outside weird spots. And then we have Arjun's Medal. This is, I think, just dead. Does anyone disagree that this is dead? Oh, Spell Totem. Okay, let's just come back to Spell Totem. I must have... Oh, yeah, it can be used while moving. Yeah, that actually... I'm underestimating how significant that is, I think, Mr. Griffin V. I think you're probably right that is better than it sounds. Can be used while moving is actually quite substantial. Anyways, jumping back into the support changes, Arjun's Medal I think is just dead, right? Does anyone not agree that is just getting absolutely gutted? Like, ouch. That feels like it's just getting, like, thumped on the head really, really hard. That's my feeling there anyway. Butter's Vengeance is... So the conditional freeze, it's going to grant you it's going to grant you half the benefit it used to, and it's also for a shorter period of time. So this is way worse than it was. As conditional upon inflicting a freeze as well. I just think this is like I don't think this is going to be the best choice anymore for anything, whereas it used to be the best choice for everything. We had some questions earlier about corrupting cry. So this is Grinding Games writing them into a corner. They made the decision that support gems would not have gem levels, and now they're dealing with it here. They've decided that the corrupting cry is not to be a meta gem, it's to be a skill gem. I'd say to be a support gem. And that means that they need to find a way to work out how much damage it should deal. And they've decided to queue that off the gem level of the actual active gem it's tied to. So that's going to come up with a whole bunch of other things. Gala's Desire is being nerfed and is still excellent. And we're just looking if there's anything else that really stands out. Deirdre's Undoing is copying Hextoad from Path of Exile 1, which is kind of funny. Infernal Legion 1 and 2 are getting gutted, gutted, as is 3. 3 is just obliterated entirely. And was looking what else there was. Paquati's Pact is getting the same sort of corrupted blood effects there that are significant. Rage skills, rage supports can now support minion skills. Ratha's Assault is just a slight change. The refraction ones these are actually getting pretty solid. Giving allies deflection rating equal to a percentage of their evasion. As long as your minions have got evasion, which they would have some, that's actually probably pretty substantial. Uhtred's Augury and Uhtred's Omen are getting nerfed, but Shock Conduction 2 is getting deleted. And this one is crazy, crazy, crazy. This thing is absolutely busted in live, Shock Conduction 2. So what it is doing is it is guaranteeing that it guarantees that anything that you cast on that's drenched is going to get shocked, and then that shock will proliferate, or at least has a chance to proliferate. It's really, really strong. Anyways, it's gone. So this is something that's quite a nerf. This is the only nerf to the plant watering build, but it is substantial. And yeah, it was primarily used for Thunderstorm. Not the only thing. Interestingly, Super Maximus is saying that Kripparrian is doing some numbers and thinks that Infernal Legion, despite the massive nerf, like the 50% nerf that it's getting, that it will still be the best minion build by damage. That would be funny if true. That'd be funny if true, but yeah. So Shock Conduction 2 is just getting deleted entirely. Shock Conduction 1 does the same thing except with the Drench shenanigans. After this, we have Uhtred's Augury and Omen. We sort of touched on those earlier. These are getting nerfed pretty hard. I think that Uhtred's Augury is no longer going to be one of the top support gems in the game. And Vault is getting a buff here, but it's not a big buff. It is still a real one, and it feels like it's back to being a live support gem again. But this was the defining gem of 020. People always think of it as Lightning Spear League, but really it was Vault League. Vault support was just broken, and they nerfed Vault so hard. Now they've given it back some of that power, but it's still like looking like it's okay there. Okay, in the unique items, so important to note that Atsuri's Acuity is granting you Pact, so you've got to factor that in there. That's quite transformative to the way that you play, and honestly, I don't want to pass judgment on this item yet. It's just getting so many reworks to it that I just want to wait and see the whole package, see the way people end up playing around with it. Brass Dome, people have said this is getting nerfed. I don't think this is a nerf. I think this is neutral because it's also picking up more base defenses. If it is a nerf, it's a small one. It's not a very big change. Choba Chaba getting buffed, but not by enough. Just kind of funny. And Death's Harp is interesting. So they've decided to go with, instead of 3 additional arrows, instead 250 to 330% surpassing chance to fire an additional arrow. What this means is that well-rolled ones, they'll Crangle Divine Well. That's the main thing that's important with this item. That said, I don't think Death's Harp is particularly good at the moment. Now, Eshterra's Path, don't go looking for this. It's one of the Sanctum exclusive rings. The Sanctum exclusive rings are getting split out into 3 items. So there's a separate line for that. I was trying to work out what on earth is Eshterra's Path when I was streaming on Twitch earlier today. That's the answer to it. Harizara is getting nerfed. It's getting nerfed moderately hard. It's not crushing, but it is real. Levinstone is getting nerfed. Plaguefinger is getting nerfed in a way that won't affect most builds, but because it's a poison item, but it can affect some. So that's important to note. This is going to turn off the ability to accidentally shock when you're inflicting poison on enemies, but you probably won't be doing that often. What else have we got here? We've got the Prized Palm, just looking if there's anything else really substantial. Radiant Grief is being doubled and is still bad. Saffron's Resolve is another one of those Sanctum items. Sekhmet's Resolve. This is the ringing question. This is the one that's being split into 3. So this is Saffron's Resolve, Zeta's Longevity, and Eshterra's Path. Someone's just had a good comment. Mr. Griffin has just mentioned Death's Harp might be something that's very good to upgrade with the new mechanic. I'm just going to confirm it's item level. Yeah, it's item level 28. You're right. That could actually end up being really, really explosively good. If you were to upgrade that to a higher tier base, it might be quite a bit better. But even then, it's only going to upgrade to level 55 bases, I think, which might not be enough. But still, worth a look, worth a look. Soul Mantle is getting Giga buffed. This is a massive buff here. So 75 to Spirit, which is +1 totem in many situations, like in conjunction with Ancestral Bond, and no longer has a nerf to totem life. Very, very strong. Svalin is getting double buffed as well. Svalin was already quite good. And then in item changes, we've got the stuff that was known about perfect currencies. This also applies to greater ones. The transmutation and augmentation upgraded versions are going to be rarer. So that's kind of ouch, although they will drop a bit earlier. But now we have the most significant things here. And I want to actually take these as I want to take these 3 lines as one unit, because this is the Divine Orb Sync and the Divine Orb Faucet. The first line here, Divine Orbs are now more common. We don't know whether this means Divine Orbs are now getting a buff that would be in line within Path of Exile 1 if GGG were to say Divine Orbs are now as common as Ancient Orbs are, which is just a 50% buff. It could be a 300 or 400% buff, like going from current Divine Orb drop rate in Path of Exile 1 to current Gemcutter Prism drop rate, or it could be a 1900% buff, current Divine Orb buff drop rate up to current Exalt drop rate in Path of Exile 1. We don't know which of these it is, so it's really hard to judge how substantial this will be. However, the corruption outcome that randomizes numeric values of the modifiers on an item beyond normal range, aka Krangle Divining, this now multiplies each modifier based on the current value instead of randomizing it first. This is massive. What this means is that if you want to get an extraordinarily well-rolled unique item, you are going to want to apply Divine Orbs to an item, get a well-rolled version, not a perfectly rolled one, and then from that point you then Krangle Divine it. So let's say that you have Widowhail. Widowhail has a roll range of 150 to 250 on its only stat. The current meta is that you apply Val Orbs to a lot of 150 rolls, and some of them will Krangle Divine to like 270 if you're really lucky. The new meta is that you roll them to 240 plus with Divine Orbs, and then you apply the Val Orb to them. This is very different. This is going to be a massive sink of Divine Orbs from the economy. It's going to delete a tremendous amount of them. On top of this, we also have Sanctification of Rares doing the same thing as well. So we don't know exactly how common Divine Orbs will be after this, but it would not shock me if Orbs of Annulment end up being the new currency instead. We'll have to find out exactly where things go, but I would not be shocked if we start thinking of if Divine Orbs end up quite cheap and Orbs of Annulment end up replacing them. That just comes down to what more common actually means. And yeah, there won't be as many in the Trade League economy as there were in 040, but 040 was a broken economy. Like, that was That was a mess. So yeah, this corruption is now stronger, but that is actually a reason to use a lot of divine orbs here. A lot here. Lavashan, they have not nerfed the overpowered boss from the interludes. That is an interest. That is a good point, actually. I think that the that interlude boss is really really strong, really overpowered, and it's very hard to work out what's going on that particular boss. It's messy to learn because there's just that delay going into it. And yeah, I agree. The Interlude 2 boss is too strong, and also it's nasty the timing that goes. I think it's interesting that everyone has different ideas on what the trading currency will be. So we've had one person say that we've had people say it'll still be divines because it's always been divines. We've had people say it'll be chaos orbs. We've had people say it'll be perfect exalts. I've said maybe perfect chaos. I've said maybe annuls. Like honestly, all of these make sense. All of these could be the case. I feel like annuls make the most sense personally. And one of the big things there is that they have the least utility for a rookie player, which means that if a rookie player gets one, they're most likely to just turn around and sell it rather than go, oh, this isn't, oh, this, I'm going to use this on XYZ item. Whereas if you've got a perfect chaos, you might just use it on an item and go, oh yeah, wow, that just made my 2 chaos item into a 7 chaos item. That's great. But whereas a null is just going to always leave an item off worth. Sanctifying also gets the same thing as Krangle Divining. It's getting the same buffed. Omens of Corruption are gone. This one surprised me a bit, but I think it's probably because of this. I think they want this to be a massive deletion of Divine Orbs from the economy, and having Omens of Corruption be obtainable decreases how effective this is. And martial weapons and flasks found in the campaign are more likely to be of the highest base type available at this level. This is mostly good, but there will be the odd time that this sucks. This is going to suck when you have a base that is like has a implicit that's so good that you really want it. Like with grenades that fire +1 crossbow. So that's gonna be messy. Essences are being changed around. You will get more of them in the campaign, but less of them will be essences of the infinite. So you will get different essences. I think the essence of the infinite, from memory, it's the one that provides attribute mods. It's quite solid, but it's kind of been addressed. The reasons that you needed those early on was because attributes were so oppressive, but attributes were less oppressive now that runes are being buffed. So I don't think that's a real problem. Armor that's granted by items and modifiers has been increased as you get to higher levels. At level 65, you should have 33% more armor, tapering down to 15% at level 80 plus. This is a big buff, and the same is being made to evasion. And also, this is then going to compound with the fact that deflection has been buffed as well for evasion. The amount of energy shield granted by items is now unchanged at level 80 plus, but slightly more at level 65. And the Vile Robe armor base type now has less base energy shield. So gone out of the way to say, right, we're going to nerf a bunch of things related to energy shield earlier. Energy shield buffer is staying mostly the same, like not exactly, but mostly the same. And the other stuff is going to be tweaked around a bit. If you play in standard, here's what's going to happen with legacy items. Now, there's a couple of changes to existing weapons. The most important things here, though, there are going to be some other things that come up here with plus to gem levels. I mentioned at the very start of this stream that I'm disappointed that they aren't addressing this problem more aggressively. They're leaving plus to attack levels as just a mandatory stat. Like, it's more mandatory than attack speed, and attack speed is mandatory enough. But this is the same thing and worse. So yeah, that's just going to end up. It's still a problem basically. They haven't solved the problem. They've made a change, but not solved the problem, and that's just going to apply to all of those. After this, This is one of the big sources of more life that you can get now. Body runes are getting a big buff, a 50% buff, and I think this is actually more important than it looks. People people are understating how much this is going to be. This is not going to make it as good as iron runes are on energy shield items, but it is pretty substantial. So that one's very big, and this I think is going to make a big difference in terms of just survivability on melee builds. Just going back to the projectile skills and melee skills for a second, I feel like that they should have done is limit it to +1 or maybe +2, and then refunded that power somewhere else. So make it so that you get like +2 or +3 gem levels of extra power just built into the scaling on route to 20, and then so that's where you get the power back. But is this +1 or +2? It would still be a very good suffix. You just wouldn't be you don't have a weapon without it. And also do the same for casters. And then there'd just be much more interesting variants in caster gear. A whole lot of weapons that are unusable would be usable. Anyways, is one of the problems that they just need to get around to at some point, I think. Body runes, way better than they were. This is a big problem solver for life builds, especially early on in progression. You can use these, get yourself a fair bit of extra durability early on. Mind runes are getting buffed, but not by very much. I think GGG is still afraid of Archmage coming back at the level it was in 010. Rebirth runes, these may as well not exist. Inspiration runes, these may as well not exist except in staves and wands, and even then, like, they're a last resort. They really are a last resort there. Now, stone runes may as well not exist. Vision runes, only getting a very slight buff there. That's like +10 to accuracy at all ranks. And the reason they're only going +10 is because there is that Amazon node. And then we have these. I think these are fantastic. They're increasing the amount of resistance that you get on resistance runes. This is such a problem solver. Like, this is just absolutely fantastic for solving problems on your character in early endgame in particular. This is going to be great. All of these, and also for solving problems with attributes. This is nice down here, but not as significant as going from 14 to 18 on the resist. That's huge. I feel like you're going to be definitely using these a lot when you're trying to get through, like when you're trying to build a set for early mapping. There's a bunch of things related to bonded modifiers, and I also want to point out quickly that there have been some nerfs to these three. The Lady Hestra's rune, it's not really much of a nerf. The conditional cold damage is still going to apply to chilled enemies most of the time, but the other ones only apply to shocked and ignited enemies, which is harder to do. So I feel like these three are now very imbalanced against each other, and honestly, I'm just not sold on them now. I think they're way worse than they were. And then we have all these idols here. I went through all the idols extensively on my Twitch stream, but I wasn't particularly sold on anything. Nothing really jumped out at me as super exciting. Like, the Fox idol's kind of cool now, but didn't really sing out as like, oh wow, this is fantastic. Unfortunately, the Rabbit idol providing rarity is going to mean that you just got to have one of them in your chest piece. It's not an option really, but it's better to have one than to have multiple because it is now limit 1. And so yeah, that's sort of on the awkward end. Maximum rage on Ruby Jules has now been buffed. And then we have a bunch of just very minor modifiers here that are mostly just reinforcing existing changes related to energy shield and other little things. Then we have some nerfs that are actually buffs. So the Squire's hybrid physical damage and accuracy modifier on weapons. This now has a higher minimum level. This sounds like a nerf, right? But this is actually intended as a buff. The rationale for this is that this is a terrible mod early on. It crowds out other better mods. And as a result, they just don't want it to appear in Act 1. Later on, it's got the same chance of appearing. So this one I think this one is quite a bit better than it was. And that's happening to a few other particular mods here, like accuracy and the like. I just making it so that you don't need it early on. Now, gold. There's a couple of changes related to gold as well. So you're going to pick up a few thousand more gold in the campaign, so 10,000 more gold, in fact. That'll be from Oswald. But also at the same time, the gold price of weapons for asynchronous trade has been roughly increased by 50%. That said, the cost for transferring weapons in async is like it's all of async in Path of Exile 2 is pretty minimal. It's always just go and run one map and you'll get everything there. Monster changes. Culling strike for normal enemies is now 35% instead of 30%. This is a moderate buff, but it's going to actually feel like a bit more in some situations. Do not use this in conjunction with the Chronomancer, but with that node. But there is also the capacity to guarantee cull with one hit through the use of one of the new Tangmazu themed items. I think that's just going to be a meme, but it is something you can actually do if you really want to. Monster Leech resistance now starts at a later level, and values are smaller at every level. So here's that change to Monster Leech resistance we were talking about. All monster rarities now have the same amount of this stat. And then after that, we have the Essence monster packs are now affected by modifiers to monster pack size. And one of my favorites here, Viper Napuatzi's soldiers constricting the arena size. This is going to recover some of your flask charges. A bunch of other little things there. But basically, this is pretty much almost everything that's in the patch notes. There's some UI changes there, which are all very minor. And then the microtransactions change, I wanted to quickly point out something with this. This is quite a lot, and I've been paying attention to how much they're doing here. The reason I pay attention to this is not that I really care about too many of these. There are a few personal favorites that I will want to use that I already own in Path of Exile 1, and that I'm looking forward to being able to use in 2. The primary reason that I say this is because this is the sort of thing that is a low priority thing that Grind Gear games actually do want to do, but it's not a high priority for them. So the fact that they're putting work into this indicates that they're a bit ahead of schedule on something. At the very least, they've got a bunch of artists that are free to do some work that's not absolutely critical, and that makes me confident that they're maybe that bit further along in Acts 5 and 6. So that's a good thing there. Just on the trading in the campaign and gold comment that's come up in chat there, I always find it difficult to trade in the campaign because until Act 4 you can't. But by the time I hit Act 4, I always have like so much more gold than anything. Questions. Built Not at Board is asking, is this are the changes to Energy Shield going to hit Energy Shield, pure Energy Shield builds harder or hybrid builds harder? I think it's about equal. I think that it's primarily it's going to mean that Energy Shield builds that take hits are going to have to duck out of combat a bit. They're going to have to start playing carefully. Once you've been hit, for a few seconds, you've got to be really careful. That's the feeling I've got with what's going on. With respect to with comment linked cast on critical strike, I think it's gonna take testing to figure it out. I don't know if it's dead, but I feel it's in a bad spot. I wouldn't mind seeing it completely dead, but I'm also not confident that GGG have necessarily nerfed it enough for that. So I guess we'll find out. Yelvin, not only is this stream going to be uploaded later, it already is, and you can rewind it now if you want, if you prefer. We're getting close to the end now, but you can rewind it if you want. So you can already do that. Now so we already mentioned like the reason I'm optimistic about seeing all of these is not so much that I really care about getting access to them all. It's just that GGG have the time to do things that are discretionary. They're not panicked. They're not in crisis mode where they're going, okay, that's a medium priority task, so cancel it and work on this high priority emergency instead. That is a very positive thing. Now, it is entirely possible that they're also just getting rookie designers to do some of the artwork. That's also possible. But I feel like this is probably a good sign in general. Bug fixes section. I don't think from memory that there was anything in here that was a massive that was of massive impact, but I do want to just double check that quickly. So I'm just flicking through everything. This is the last section other than the recent changes. Fixed a bug where Melting Maelstrom Mana Flask was unable to hit enemies. It's such a weird flask, that. This was a big one. Fix a bug where Abyss precursor tablets were adding one Abyss each rather than just enabling Abysses spawning. That's something that was going to be really impactful if it was around later on. I'm just looking if there's anything. I can't remember anything really substantial in here, but I just want to check that. I didn't see anything there. I'm going to quickly refresh at this point and just check if there's anything else that's new. No, it's just things that I already knew and that were already in there. So, Lostro Gaming is asking, hybrid armor energy shield, is it even worse this patch? Yes, it is. Hybrid energy shield armor is not worked out. Granny Games have not solved that problem yet, and it's just a mess. Hey, Synoptic Intelligence, thank you for the super chat. May your Valorbs have cursed results. And grenades and twisters. So just to give a sense as to where I think grenades and twisters are going, they're going to be very solid day one builds, as is Disciple of Rashta, but I do think they're going to fall off at some point. BLT Space is asking, how many times have I read these patch notes? Too many. Too many. I am definitely at the point where I am done for the day now. I am glad to be done for the day, but it is always fun to do the sort of, the first thoughts on Twitch is good. First thoughts on Twitch is a hot mess. There's lots of mistakes, but it's a good chance to sort of get through those. Then there's the polished summary, and then there's the sort of hybrid Q&A and going through the things that don't make the polished summary. Some of you might be curious about that polished summary. I'll put a link to it in a sec. Where are we? I'm just going to jump over to YouTube Studio in my second window for a sec. That's the one. So that's that is the link to the summary of everything. That is the other one that's maybe worth having a look at if you're interested. That was my summary of the patch notes. That was a slightly more polished one, but ultimately it is such a busy day that I can't go do everything justice. What am I league starting? I am torn between going with familiar grenades or the unfamiliar Disciple of Varashta. I feel like both of them are looking pretty good. Disciple of Varashta people are not talking much about. Mickey Man, if you go Witch Hunter, Witch Hunter's got a lot going for it. Very solid grenade start. Palinsas 9078 is asking knee-jerk prediction for what the meta will be. I feel like the day one meta is going to be grenades, Twister, Poison Burst Arrow, and maybe Disciple of Rashta, but people aren't talking about that much yet. And then later on, it's kind of really hard to say. We don't know the challenges of the new content yet. That's going to have a big impact. Because, is this going to be a meta where you value move speed more, or a meta where you value damage more, or a meta where you value tankiness more? I don't know any of that. But yeah, familiar does mean faster. That's something that I find is quite different between Path of Exile 1 and 2. I like familiar in 2 now. And Twister will get the most hype, I think, yeah. Twister's going to get a lot of hype. Also, don't rule out the Tempest Bell Monk as well. Monk is getting a big buff there. I'm not certain on Brash Dominions or plants. Probably plants, but I have to learn it. I have to learn the archetype. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff to mess around with. I think there's a lot of cool things you can do. But I am thinking at this point that I need to go and get myself some sleep at the moment. I think this is one of those days where it's just been such a crazy day. Kind of going to need to go and fall asleep. Wake up tomorrow. Probably see if there's any more teasers. I don't know if there's going to be a teaser tomorrow. I wouldn't mind a day off, honestly. But also, if there's no rest for the wicked, there's no rest for the wicked. And then I will see folks around. I guess may your Varlobs all have cursed results. And yeah, have fun. And thank you all for tuning in.